lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
Well, all right, and welcome everybody to the first ever LCG Premier Pop Culture Auction Extended Bidding Watch Party on Sports Cards Live. It is Sunday afternoon, February the 19th, 2023, and my name is Jeremy Lee. I'd like to let you all know later on tonight, PWCC Weekly Hockey auction coverage will be happening here with myself and Josh Madigan of the Hockey Cards Gong Show, and tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern, Collectible Live with Vincent Zerzolo of Metropolis Collectibles and Comic Connect. I want to thank everybody for joining, all of our loyal subscribers and podcast listeners. If you're not yet subscribed to this YouTube channel, please take a moment and do so. And with that, let's kick this off and bring out our guests. Mark Montero, founder of LCG Auctions. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Enjoying the final moments here. We have about 20 minutes left.
All right. And let's also bring on Dennis Hall, expert in Star Wars, among other things. Dennis, welcome to the show.
How's it going, guys?
You excited for tonight?
I'm very excited for tonight. Definitely.
All right. Well, first, a couple of, I think, sort of housekeeping comments for everybody. This auction is going to go into extended bidding in about 20 minutes time, meaning you have that much time to get in your opening bids in order to qualify for extended bidding. And you can see on the screen right now, you can bid and register to bid at lcgauctions.com under the auction tab. Mark, Dennis, anything you'd like to mention to people about the registration process or bidding in general?
I'll go ahead and say there's still time to register. We'll try to get you in. If you discovered us on this show, please cite Jeremy as how you heard about us. That would be great, but there's still time to register. You do have to have a bid in on each item of interest in order to participate in extended bidding to bid on that item again. If you see a deal during extended and you don't have that initial bid in, you will not be able to place a bid in the extended period.
So again, about 19 minutes left to get those initial bids in. And we have people, Mark has people on alert, ready to process new bidders, new customers of LCG. If you want to bid on anything, go over there, fill out the registration form. You will be approved within the next 19 minutes, hopefully, if you qualify. And then you'll be able to get in your initial bids before the extended bidding window begins. Again, 19 minutes from now. And then you can bid. Then you can have a chance at winning some of these cool items. There are 227 lots in the auction this time, and they really span over about 10 different categories. Lots of, we've got Star Wars, we've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Masters of the Universe, and He-Man. We've got WWF, we've got VHS, we've got video games, original comic art. We've got some cells from various shows as well. We've got an iPhone, an original iPhone, as Mark mentioned on the IG Live that we just did. It is already a record-setting iPhone. It's at $32,783 at this time. And perhaps the coolest item in the auction, at least from my perspective, is the original negative from the 1977 Topps Luke Skywalker card. Dennis, you are the resident Star Wars expert. What can you tell us about this negative? And I'm going to share it with everybody momentarily here.
Yeah, definitely. It's lot number 28. And what it was is back in the day, whenever Kenner was producing the toys for Lucasfilms Limited, they sent over reference material over to the Kenner department in order to make decisions about how they're going to design and use the product. Use the items in reference for the product. And they would send oftentimes pictures from the film and media that was used for distribution in other areas. And there's a gentleman named Kim Simmons who is responsible for all photography within Kenner. And Kim actually in the early 2000s cataloged his collection and sold off his collection of slides, and this was one of those slides. And the way that it goes is he had this. If you look at these numbers at the top, JWSW 6661B. So the JWSW was actually not a unique identifier. It was actually the cataloging system that he chose to use. Those are the numbers. I actually have another of my own slides from a different. This is R2D2. You can't see it, but another slide with also the JWSW indicator on there. And then the numbers after that were just a sequencing serialization of that slide. And the last number was the sequence of photos in the set, for lack of a better term. So it's crazy. Yeah, it can get a little deep. But for this actually came from reference material from LFL, Lucasfilms Limited, to Kenner to give them reference on what they should do for the figure that was released for the Power of the Force line. Ironically, it was also the exact same image that was used for the Topps 1 card, the famous Topps 1 Luke Stormtrooper card. The art is the exact same picture. They were used maybe in a sequence of 10, 20, up to 30 pictures, maybe in a row. And this was one of the photos in that original sequence. If you go to the next picture, you can see and quickly compare that it's the same angle, same shot, same even expression on his face, the exact moment, the positioning of his armor, etc. It's the exact same, if not maybe a little airbrush. They did a little bit of that, obviously, here and there, but it is the same image. So these are one of those. It's kind of like a one of one piece, essentially, because there wasn't another 6661B. There actually, B would be the second image in the series, so there is an A out there. I don't know if there's a C or a D. We were reached out to Mr. Simmons to find out, and didn't get clarification on that. But there are a few images sometimes in the line, but this is a one of one of this particular shot of this particular scene. Every other picture in the sequence would have been a slightly different variation of that shot. So this is a one of one piece.
I mean, it seems crazy to me that this is the original. This is the one of one piece that created the card, which is likely the most iconic card in all of Star Wars sports cards. It's
most valuable for sure. It's sold for the highest amount of PSA 10.
And the number one card in the set. I mean, that to me, it's like from a baseball card perspective, the first Upper Deck card ever made, besides those promos, was the Ken Griffey Jr. number one. That is of that level of importance in my mind. And this is the original negative for that card. You look at what some Type 1 photos and Type 2 photos can sell for, cards, images that were used on cards themselves, or even not. 1,000. Like I said to Mark the other night, and listen, I don't know this. I don't know what the market's like for this, but I'm surprised that this thing isn't worth way more, or not worth, but selling for a lot more than $1,000. To me, this is a dark horse sleeper. I think somebody's going to become is going to be very lucky, very fortunate to get it if it ends at anywhere close to $1,099. So
I think it's a very special piece. It's hard to put a value on it. It's definitely one of those things where the market dictates the value, and it's a very special piece. And being a one of one and being of the same art from the card is if you love Luke Skywalker, if you love Luke Stormy, it's a great piece for that collector. So it's an excellent piece.
Yeah.
So let me interject, Jeremy. The consignor that sent this over actually sent us a reference picture to the Power of the Force action figure, the carded action figure, and paired that image with that, which is what it was intended to do based on what Dennis is saying. It was sent by Lucasfilms to Kenner as a reference to make that action figure and the card and the design. And we saw it and we said, wait a second, this is actually the 1977
card,
iconic Topps card of Luke Skywalker. Let's dig into this a bit. And the match is, compare it to yourself, side by side. It's as good as you're going to get, and it may be a very special piece. We started it at just $350 just to see what'll happen. The market will dictate it, but man, that's an exciting one.
It is. I agree.
We have a question here from Collectors League. Jeremy says, does the slide come with rights? Do we have any information on that, fellas?
It would not come with rights. These rights are very, I mean, for one thing, this discussion's come up a lot, especially with Star Wars photography. It's actually kind of a gray area, but the rights would not be, you would not have the rights to use this in other media type of thing, unless it was actually the item itself, I would say. We don't have the rights to use it in other forms.
Fair enough. Okay, well, thanks for the question, Jeremy. All right, so let's go back to the main page here. We have a category called Platinum Lots, and among them is this iPhone here. Mark, is this already a record at $32,783 for a sealed iPhone?
With the buyer's premium right now, it matches the all-time record of any iPhone ever sold, and we haven't entered extended bidding. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. This one came to us. It's really amazing because we had a lot of press coverage based on the prior sale, which was also a record. Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Fox Business, you name it, put it out there. We had so many hits on the website from the last sale. Usually when that happens, you're bombarded with people that say, I've got that, sell it for me. We didn't get any other first edition iPhones to come to us. We had similar ones, but not the first release that matched the last one we sold. And not only did we get this one had a tremendous story behind it. It's Miss Kim Green contacted us, and I can't tell you how hard it was to convince her to actually sell it. She was so torn. I did my best, and finally she folded and sent it in. But we have a video on here where she's on. If you go to the lot, Jeremy, at the bottom there's an interview with Business Insider with our consignor. I think there's a link to it somewhere. Is it at the? So there's an image of it on the television show, but that's the Business Insider right there. That's a mainstream publication. Interview with her, how she got it, all the details, and not only that, but there's video footage from the show she was on years ago. She brought it on. They offered her they told her it was a $5,000 piece. Which maybe at the time was a lot of money, but she hung on to it, and look what's happening now.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see it on a mainstream publication like this that has a lot of ads. So we'll close that up pretty quick here and not. Dennis, were you jumping in with something?
I was just gonna say we just cracked the last record. Just beat it. Just got a bid on the iPhone. Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, so all-time record. We haven't even entered extended.
Well, congratulations,
Sky's the
LCG.
Limit. I was going to go over maybe some other items that are kind of like flying under the radar. If you guys wanted to go through some real quick.
Yeah, let's do it, Dennis. Give me the lot number and I'll get to it as fast as I can.
Yeah, most definitely. Lot number 93.
Let's go to lot number 93.
Yeah, this is a Luke Skywalker loose figure. And it's an AFA 80 grade. But one thing really unique about this Luke is that he has the brown hair and the dark pants variant. This figure trends around the $800 to $1,000 range, pretty much in this grade. And it's definitely a sleeper at this point, definitely at $389. Awesome piece. Highly recommend you guys taking a look. Another one really cool to look at would be lot number 66, which is a 10-back soft head AFA 85 Michelangelo turtle. Pretty much it's pretty easy to say that the 10-backs are the quintessential turtle piece. A 10-back and a soft head is one of the earliest releases of a turtle. And this is a Mikey 10-back in the 85 high grade. 85s are so difficult for turtles. This being at only 46 right now is pretty amazing to me. I'm surprised that it's only there at this point. Another really awesome piece that I expected to be in a different position right now, we'll still have to see, is going to be lot number 102, which is a Luke Stormtrooper 12-back in AFA 80 grade. It's a beautiful piece, excellent condition in an 80 grade. It's a 12-back B. If you guys don't know it, there was actually 5 different releases of the 12-backs, A, B, C, D, E. And ABC is the most common. This is a B, so it's the second the second release for this Stormy, and this is an awesome high grade example of this Stormtrooper. I'm going to go ahead and hit on a really cool piece that I really love, and that's lot number 167. This is a G1 Transformers Jetfire. So Jetfire was one of the few that weren't in the cartoon that made it to toy form, and it came originally from a Japanese toy. And the company that made them was Macross, and there's a little designation on the wing, a little emblem that didn't come on the release for Jetfire. I could actually, if you keep yours up, I'll grab mine real quick to show the distinction. It's a pretty rare variant, even in a Q grade means it's been opened. But if you look right about here on the one in our auction, you'll see there's a little item there, a little icon there, and that did not come on the later releases. This is a very early release Jetfire. Beautiful piece, greatly undervalued at this point. I think it has a lot of opportunity to go higher in this auction. I don't know if you had anything, Mark, that you were thinking of. Oh, another, I guess one more a really cool Joe is we can hit up is lot 142 and 143, kind of right beside each other.
These two snake eyes right here.
Yeah, these two snake eyes. So these guys are really high grade examples of the G.I. Joe release of Snake Eyes with Timber being the dog. And there's two big distinctions between these two. The first release is the one on the left, which is what they call a flat logo. So the logo itself doesn't have like a 3D effect to it. And the one to the right of it, and look, here you go, we're zooming in there, you can see it's a very flat logo. And the one to the right of it, lot 143, is a 3D version of that logo. So these were the first two releases with Timber. They're both very high grade. They both have room to grow. Definitely great price points right now, and amazing pieces for anybody to add to their G.I. Joe collection. If you were a Joe head as a kid, you love Snake Eyes, you love Storm Shadow pretty much. That's where it was at. So this is definitely a cool piece for those Joe collectors, either one to get back in or they're already collecting one to add a nice piece to their collection.
Very good. 5 minutes away now from the extended bidding window kicking in. So if anybody wants to get a bid in on any of these items that Dennis is highlighting or anything else in the auction, again, 5 minutes in order to be qualified to continue to bid when the extended bidding window kicks in. Mark, anything you'd like to add on lots that you think are overlooked at this point or just exciting?
Well, let's jump to the very top. Lot number 1.
Oh,
this one is blowing my mind because the explosion back G.I. Joes, they're very early, 1983. This one was years before the one that Dennis just showed us. This is an early Snake Eyes release. The back of it has these coming soon icons on it. And these are like considered a holy grail amongst G.I. Joe collectors. The last Snake Eyes that sold went for $25,000. So to see it at this price is really surprising. And somebody looks like they're going to do really well on it. This one is one that we went on with Fox Business. It was aired on national television, which, you know, you pair the two together. It's kind of a great pairing to have for provenance and for just to have something a little extra with your piece.
Yeah, what a cool story it is. And I mean, I was not a Joe head as a kid. I was more of a Frogger head. So I do have a bid in on the Frogger video game. I'm gonna
Awesome.
I don't know what lot. There it is. This one right here. I put in a bid already. I'm outbid right now, but I'm qualified for. Oh, it's up to 518 now. I'm qualified. What's your you guys? You know, you don't have a lot of video games in this month's or the winter auction, but how exciting is video game collecting right now as far as overall pop culture goes?
It's amazing. I think that it's at the moment we are looking at kind of a unique point in time for buying video games, and the fact that it had a really big bump and then it started to come back down, but now it's getting to the point where a lot of collectors, I think, are getting back in. I know that I am personally. I've been buying like crazy. Actually, I have a big Final Fantasy run that I'm trying to finish. So video games, I think, are kind of like at that that sweet spot for buying at the moment. But they're also an opportunity to even get rid of your older collection, that kind of a thing. If you didn't do it yet, there's still opportunity to make money on it. So it's a really good space to be in my opinion.
Yeah. And Mark, we chatted, you came on Sports Cards Live with me on Friday night, and we talked about sort of, your outlook on why people are purchasing items like those offered by LCG. And I'd like you to repeat that now, if you don't mind. Kind of what's your advice to people when it comes to these sorts of collectibles?
So Dennis just talked about how video games had a sharp rise, and now there's a correction going on, or who knows quite what it is, but prices are falling. With the type of items that we sell, for the most part, the action figures, this is something that's been built steadily over time, over about a 20-year period since professional grading started in the early 2000s. This has been a steady incline. And the buyers that buy these, they're not speculators. The vast majority are hardcore collectors. The foundation of this space is very, very strong compared to other collectibles. So, there's a lot of speculation going on in VHS, which is something we offer. That's a little bit more risky, but the action figures is a lot more stable based on the collector base.
And there's a lot of Star Wars figures in the auction. And, I look at these, like these ones, well, there were the ones I scrolled by above, these ones down here. I mean, I remember buying these off the shelf with my mother when I was a young kid. I'm talking the late 70s, early 80s, I guess. And, are there a lot of these out there still that are sealed? As far as, Star Wars is easy to talk about because I think everybody maybe had some Star Wars figures as a kid. But like a figure like this, for example, R2-D2 here, it's at $1,299. Like, approximately how many sealed R2-D2s would there still be? And if you guys know, maybe a good question for Dennis. And I mean, I know there's different variants, but like overall, if I wanted to get a nice vintage Star Wars figure, how many are there in the population?
So there were millions made. I mean, there were a lot made. The fact that there are high grade examples that still exist surprised me all the time. I mean, the fact that I've actually bought collections, opened them up, opened a box that's been closed for 30 years, and sent them in, got an 85 grade. It blows my mind that somebody's kept it in their garage, in their basement for the last 20 years, 30 years, and forgotten about them. A lot of stories you hear about these high grade items are, grandmas who bought multiples for their kids and they forgot to give them to them, and they just stayed in the attic the whole time and that kind of thing. So this kind of things, these exist still. These finds do. But with the survival rate is very hard to say. There are literally around, I think it's about $250,000 a month in like loose Star Wars figures in the market on eBay alone. It's crazy on loose. It's insane. So I can't even imagine on the carded. I tracked it at one point in time, but there's definitely a very large amount of product out there. But in high grade, that's not the case. In 85 plus, it just doesn't exist. It's very difficult to find. Unfortunately, the population reports aren't public anymore for a lot of this stuff, but there's been some historical records kept of things, and it's very interesting to see that there's like 6 SKU Dark Domes in existence. For instance, the one that you had to highlight a few minutes ago, that are graded, that are in population. It's a very low amount compared to the maybe 1,000 or 2,000 that are graded in the 12 backs, for instance. So it's very difficult to say the overall population. But I mean, there are still finds to this day. For sure, it happens all the time, and it's exciting. It's very exciting to see them, to see the guys get to find them and sell them, and watch the community benefit from these finds too. Is amazing too. It's a lot of fun.
So still finds happening, similar to the world of sports cards, which I'm more used to talking about, but this is a ton of fun. I wanted to ask to both of you, whoever wants to jump in on this one, of these various categories of action figures, being Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and a couple of other miscellaneous ones like WWF. There's a nice Wonder Woman figure here. Which of those categories is the most popular? And is it like by a lot? And how would, if you were to rank them, like if we actually do this, I'm going to scroll up a little bit here, guys, and I'm going to go to the all categories drop down. So we can see here, Thundercats, WWF, and more is one category. Masters of the Universe, which is He-Man and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You got Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers. So all those, there's 5 or 6 of them there. Which one is the most popular of them all to this day?
I'd personally say a toss-up between Star Wars and Transformers, like at this moment. It's very hot on both. They both have, they're older, right? They're before Motu a little bit, before Turtles for sure. So they've had a little bit more length in the market. And I think that also the age of collectors has a big factor in there. Like I'm about to be 40. I think that 36 to 44 age group kind of really gravitates towards these Star Wars and Transformers. Joes are another, probably would be right behind them in my opinion. And Motu is just as strong as ever. It's interesting, man. We choose these lines because they do sell. Like we're not stupid. There are obviously a ton of other lines that came out in this time, but these are very popular, very very active lines, active collector base, and we're involved with the community. I'm involved in quite a few Joe, Star Wars, and Transformers groups myself, along with Turtles. So like I'm very aware of what's buying, what's selling, and I know these are the things that sell. Superpowers is one that obviously we only have a couple. Superpowers is kind of like on a little bit of a lull at the moment, but at the same time, Superpowers is very collectible. This Wonder Woman is amazing. If you guys don't know anything about a 33 back, they didn't have an offer on the front, so it was the only opportunity to get the full card art on the front was the 33 backs. We have a Wonder Woman and a Cyborg right now, and they're just beautiful examples of those carded figures. The Cyborg is pretty much impossible to find, very difficult to find. This is a nice example. I can't recall if this is a Y grade or not. Mark, do you remember?
The Cyborg is a Y, yes.
But it's very, very low tinge of yellow. Same with the Wonder Woman. It's probably like a 3 or a 4 on the scale. And I'd say Cyborg is probably a 2 on the scale, up to 10. This is an 85 Cyborg. You don't find them like this. This is a beautiful piece. I expect this to go for quite a bit more in extended bidding for sure. Same with Wonder Woman. It should be interesting to see where they end up.
So one thing, Jeremy, we're now in the extended bidding period. We're 5 minutes in. Just a quick explanation. There's a 10-minute clock. If you go up to the upper left side, I believe, it's on each item, Dennis? Is that how it works?
If you were to click on the item, it'll say the time left.
There it is, extended bidding.
4 minutes left, for instance, in this period.
So each time a bid comes on any item in the entire auction, it'll reset the clock once the clock hits 0. If the auction doesn't end for 2 hours at 7 p.m. Eastern time, instead of the clock being on the whole auction, the clock will be on each item. So one bid on one item doesn't affect the other item. So it'll end item by item beginning at 7. If we get there. The auction, we could only be on here, Jeremy, for another 15 minutes.
Possible.
Well, I've been looking forward to this for like a month. I hope we're not going to be done in 15 minutes here, Mark. Let's take a second, let you guys gather your thoughts. I want to go to some comments and see what everyone's saying, because we haven't had a chance to do that yet. But now that extended bidding is underway, I think we can take a few minutes and say, happy Sunday to you, Brandon Metalberg. Good to see you here in the chat. Here, I'm just going to, we'll do that so we can see everybody. Dexflow says, Jay Lee, very curious what that Prawl pre-rub FAA 85 goes for. I own one, had no clue it was worth that much now. Dennis, what is he, or Mark, what is he referring to? Because I don't know what that means.
He's referring to a Transformer, Prowl, I believe. Yes. In our last auction, we sold an AFA 80. I believe it went between 6,000 and 8,000, which was a record by far. We thought that would go for something like 2,500, and it more than doubled it. So here's an 85 pre-rub, which means it's an early release, much tougher to find. And this is one of the most popular Transformer cars. It's the police car. A lot of people don't have this. So 85 for what we do for AFA is about equivalent to a BGS 9.5. So it's a really well-conditioned piece, even better than the picture depicts.
So I found it there, and here it is. So this is, oh, yeah, sorry, here, let me just get myself, there we go. So this is one of the Dexflow says he has one of these. Go ahead, Dennis.
That's awesome, man. Hit us up, by the way. We'll sell it next auction. One thing really awesome about Transformers is if you can find an example that doesn't have the crease folded over on the flap. And this is a very good example of that, where there's not a crease. If you have a Transformers piece that doesn't have that and it's sealed with tape on both sides, you're looking at a good piece. Pretty much in any G1, you're looking at a good piece to sell. I mean, for sure.
It's funny when we look and we see the old price tag being $6.97, and that just is not the case today. $4,076 at the moment is where this one is at. So cool stuff. All right, let's keep on going here. Yo, Jeremy Allen, welcome to the show. The sports card dad, my friend Dustin, says very cool stuff. Thanks, Jeremy, for the exposure to LCG. Been looking for an auction house focused on Masters of the Universe, etc. Super glad, Dustin, that you found us here. Mod Cult, good Sunday to you. Dexflow says, I had no clue about LCG until Jay Lee's show. I was familiar with Hakes. Well, now you know about these guys too, Dexflow, and thanks for joining the show. Craven Cards, good afternoon to you. Dexflow says, not going to bid today. This was last minute, but next auction for sure I will be ready. Good to hear, Dex, and we'll see you then, hopefully. CC says, Beckett is an OG grader in sports cards. How long has Beckett been grading VHS tapes, and do they still grade videotapes?
They've been grading VHS, I believe, since October. We were the first to offer a Beckett graded VHS tape in our October auction. It was Friday the 13th, early release slipcover. It was their first graded tape that went for public sale. That was through us. They've been grading ever since. They've been very aggressive in their pricing. And I believe they have really good turnaround times too. So we have a bunch of Beckett graded VHS in this auction, and Heritage had a VHS signature auction this past Friday. Compare those prices to the prices that you see on our site right now, and you'll see a lot of deals are to be had.
Yeah, I missed extended on the Pulp Fiction, but I was interested in the Pulp Fiction VHS tape, Mark, because that's a movie that that was like a cult classic for me back in the 90s. But there's so many important titles here, and I'm still getting my head around the whole VHS category of collectibles, but it's not crazy to me. I mean, these are their art in themselves, and that they make a nice display piece. And the titles that you guys brought this time, I mean, I wonder if you're going to be able to match them next time. You got Rocky, Top Gun, Indiana Jones, The Gremlins, Pulp Fiction, E.T., Karate Kid.
80s, 90s nostalgia like crazy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Tons
Definitely.
of nostalgia here. It's pretty cool. It's unbelievable. Sports Card Dad says, I'm out on this auction, but going to watch and learn, but will be in on the next. That's good. I mean, that's good to hear, Dustin. And again, just thanks for being here for now with us. Dexflow says, I'd love to own that missile firing Boba Fett someday. That's a grail, right, Dennis? Talk a bit about that and some of the cool Star Wars items that are maybe in this auction and maybe that we can expect in future auctions.
Yeah, definitely. So the rocket firing Fett is one we don't have in this auction. It's one that we're actively hunting and pursuing for our auction. But that is everybody's heard the story about the rocket firing Fett. A lot of people think that they had it. There were only about 76 known in circulation out there right now and now I'm going to get it mixed up, so I'm not going to say. Actually, I think there's actually 100 altogether. There's 76 of a J or an L slot, and then 25-ish of an L slot. There's a very limited amount of quantity of these in the market. As you guys have seen, they've sold upwards of $150,000 to $200,000. A great piece of Star Wars history, definitely. They were never released because of a kid who choked on a Battlestar Galactica missile, so it kind of ruined it for everybody back then.
I learned about that by watching the Toys That The Toys That Made Us series. I've recorded all those, and I watch them over and over again because it's just such cool story. Even the He-Man episode. There's episodes on all the cool lines of toys. So the Toys That Made Us. If you want some nostalgia or just additional kind of information and entertainment on these pop culture categories that LCG offers, go watch that series. You can learn quite a bit. And they told the story on the missile firing Boba Fett, which just happens to be Dex Flow's Grail, and he's not even a Star Wars guy. I think there's a lot of that goes on, right?
I would say there's a ton that goes on, specifically with that figure and specifically with that prototype. I mean, for sure. It's a lot of crossover buyers in that area, for sure. You know, along with Boba Fett, speaking of Boba Fett, we have an amazing 20-back Boba Fett, which is very interesting. Let me look for the lot really fast, guys. Sorry. Lot number 11. So this
11.
guy right here is a beast of a men on card. This is not only an 85 grade, but a straight 85 grade. What that means is the bubble, the card, and the figure all got an 85 grade, equating to an 85 overall grade. Now, the thing that's very unique about this piece is in America, we did not see Boba Fett until the 21-back release card. I take that back. We also saw him in a mailer, but we didn't get him mint on card until 21A. One thing very unique about this is a Canadian release, 20-back. 20-back A or B, I apologize. B, 20-back B. And this particular one came in Canada, multi-language, very difficult to find. While it's not the earliest release of Boba Fett, it is the earliest card on the releases on the back for the numbers of figures. We number them based on the amount of figures that were available on the back. So this is what's considered a 20-back B. And Boba Fett was not featured on this card back, whereas he was kind of like hyped up a lot with Mail Away, hyped up a lot with the Christmas special. And anyway, they did a very good job of promoting the crap out of this guy because everybody and their mother loves Boba Fett in one way, shape, or form. But this is one of the earliest card backs you can get him on, and this is a superb example in straight 85 grade. And it's currently a little undervalued. I expect it to go probably closer to 20, 25 in this auction. It's at 15 now.
Tell us a little bit, Dennis, about the price tag, because I see that the price tag is. The price tag from Kmart is still on the card. Is that an additional benefit? Is it do collectors want the price tag? Would it have been better if the owner tried to scrape that off of there before they sent it into you?
So there's kind of a few schools of thought on this, and it has to do pretty much with when you started collecting. I would say in the last 15 years, there's been a very large attempt to like maintain the history and the provenance of where pieces came from. So keeping the price tag is really important. Back in the day, it wasn't an uncommon practice to remove a price tag. It was it wasn't taboo. Now it isn't taboo, but people genuinely don't do it. They keep it on there. It's really cool to see where a piece comes from. I love to see it whenever you have multiple price tags, or like, for instance, I grew up in Hawaii and I collect R2-D2 specifically. So I have a 12-back R2 with a Long's Drugs. Long's Drugs is where I got all of my toys as a kid. So I was specifically looking for a 12-back with a Long's Drug price tag to kind of tie me back at that nostalgia factor, like 100%. You know what I mean? So it definitely is, I think, worth it to keep it. Matter of fact, our $100,000 Luke that sold last year, DT, had a was it a child's? Now my mind goes blank. Anyways, it had a specific price tag on it from a retailer in the Northeast that was very popular. I think it was Rose, actually. And so I think it may even played a factor in the person who bought it, to be honest with you. That's how much of a factor it plays.
Looks like the iPhone has had a bid or two now. Yep. It's up to 39,667. That's more than last time we saw.
Yeah, it's popped up, and even the Snake Eyes got another bid there. Yeah, very exciting to see these bids coming in, guys. Another kind of flying on the radar piece is lot number 6. So Scratch. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is pretty much the grail of all turtle collectors right here. This is an 85 grade Scratch. There are not too many of these in population. As a matter of fact, there's only, I think, one graded higher, if I'm not mistaken, in 85 plus. But this this figure, he was a bad guy. He was obviously a convict. He had his little buddy there, and he's a little bird, a jailbird, if I'm not mistaken. And they released Scratch later on in the line, and for whatever reason, he didn't get a lot of population out there. He didn't get a lot. He was maybe a peg warmer, I think, in some degree. And I think the appreciation for him grew as time passed on, and now he's a beast to own. A very difficult piece to find. An 85 grade is very difficult for turtles in general. They have a very peculiar way that they attach the bubble, that there would often be lifting and problems with the bottom of the bubble and things. So you find a lot of pretty much 75 plus 75 and 80 grade turtles because of this bubble problems. You'll find a perfect card, perfect figure, but like a 70 bubble. So this is an 85 overall, and I want to say that I can look real fast to confirm. He got an 85 bubble, which is very, very difficult to get for a turtles piece. This one should be hitting more in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. It's definitely a little bit of a under the radar piece right now, but there's still time for sure if you get your bids in. If you already had your initial bid in, and there's 10 bids on it, I still feel pretty confident it's going to end up pretty well. Mark, did you have any other pieces that you wanted to highlight?
The He-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Lot number 3, I believe, Jeremy. Not the Wonder Bread, but the carded. So we had one in our last auction that sold for a record $32,000. Identical grade, identical release. This one, in my opinion, is in better condition, almost bar none. The front of this piece is almost like flawless. There's no veins, there's no creasing. It's spectacular. The bubble is crystal clear. This is another one that was featured on Fox Business. Got some nice airtime. We're only at $11,000 here. We're not even with the buyer's premium. We're not even at half of what we were in October. So right now, this is one to keep an eye on.
Very cool. Let's, unless you guys have any other specific lots to look at right now, I'd like to go back to some of the comments, and then I do want to look at the Wonder Bread He-Man, because there's a pretty cool story about that where we can do some education and really bring some information out there. But first of all, Dustin, the sports card dad, says the condition quality on the OG Masters of the Universe in this auction is insane. So he's just, are we going to see, I know you don't know this, but like what are your expectations that we're going to see another round of high quality Masters of the Universe in a future version of LCG's auctions? Dennis, what do you think?
I think that, there's a probability in the way of our success. There is a probability to see more pieces, to see these exact pieces come up again. It's impossible to say. If you guys don't know, when it comes to clear bubbles in Motu, you're sitting on a multiplier. So if a bubble, I have some Motu up behind me there, and in my early collecting days, I made some mistakes. You can see that even from here, that this guy right here, which is a He-Man, is very yellow. And I paid maybe about $2,500 for him, and he's the same release as our guy here. And a clear bubble can be as much as a 5 to 10 times multiplier, and I bought that a little while back, just because of the clarity of the bubble. There were some problems with some of the plastics and degradation that happened over time, and so like the blisters, the bubbles themselves would yellow and amber over time. And it's like, if you got a problem with it, you have a problem. If you don't have a problem with it, you're usually pretty okay. So this example is amazingly clear bubble. It's very difficult to find. We have a lot of really nice clear bubble Motu in this auction. And it's very hard to find these. Like, we're talking, you might see 1 in 30, 1 in 50 whenever you're looking for them in the wild. I'm saying in the wild, like on eBay, looking at other places. And then when you do see them, they go for, astronomical amounts of money. It's because they're very difficult to find in clear bubble. I was very fortunate to get a couple of mine in clear bubble that I really kind of focused on. Skeletor Battle Armor was one of the ones for me, very important for me to get clear bubble. And that was, I paid dearly. We'll put it that way. It's hard to find some of these pieces in clear bubble. And in this auction in particular, we have amazing examples in clear bubble for Motu that you just don't see. And we curate, every auction is very hand-picked, the pieces. So, we try as best we can to get these pieces. The amount of pieces we reject is amazing. You'd be surprised. And it's just because it might be an 85 grade, but a yellow bubble. And it just, we know that we can do so much better with a clear. So we try very hard to get those pieces.
I love Jeremy, this Motu collection, it comes from a world-class collection. To find 85 clear bubble Masters of the Universe is nearly impossible. We have a He-Man and a Skeletor 8-pack. There's so many
The
big
Prince Adam.
collectors
The Prince
that are
Adam.
missing these in their collection.
Yeah.
I love how I'm learning new vernacular, like Mo2 just means masters of the universe. You don't know these things. Dennis, you used the term earlier. I think you called it a peg warmer. And I think into peg warmer, that must just mean where they just don't sell. So they're hanging off the peg on the slat wall at the department store, and they just keep that peg warm. That's what that meant, right?
Yeah. So what happens with peg warmers is they often got thrown into discount bins. So because they were peg warmers thrown in discount bins got jacked up. They were meshed around a lot. And so it's really hard to find high grade examples of those peg warmers. And they end up becoming valuable because of it, as funny as that is.
Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Interesting concept.
Dexflow right here says, I agree. Most Mo2 I see on eBay have yellowing. I hate yellowing. That's like off center for sports cards. And, we do get big multipliers on very well centered cards. But when you just told us that on a clear bubble, you can get I think you said 5 to 10 times multipliers. That's way more than we're seeing on centering in cards.
Often related to the figure, like how key the figure is for sure. But definitely you can see some amazing multipliers. It exists on an extreme level. Very surprising. Another very nice example, Mo2 piece is the Prince Adam Lot 83. This is, I've owned quite a few. I still own a yellow bubble Prince Adam. I owned a clear one and I sold it and I regret it. But the Lot 83 Prince Adam clear bubble is one of the nicest I've ever seen. It's an 85 grade. It's only at $1,600 right now. That's an amazing price at the moment. Mark, I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't know Mo2 as well as far as release, but that is I think the first release for Prince Adam.
Well, there's two different. There was only one release of Prince Adam. One of them has a new burst on the top corner, and the other does not. So that's your only choice. But this is the first Prince Adam AFA 85 graded clear that I've ever seen.
Same here.
I've been around it pretty hardcore for the last two and a half years or so, and I've never seen another. He's the main character on the television series, which was super popular in the 1980s. So it's slightly yellow. We have a picture of it from the side where you can kind of judge for yourself, but it presents as clear from the front for sure, and only slightly yellow, which, Jeremy, they're clear in this condition. I'll bet there's less than 5 total.
Which one were you talking about when you said we could look at the picture of? Were you talking about the He-Man or
Prince Adam, which is lot number what, Dennis?
83, lot 83.
All right, let's go take a look down at that. There's some comments coming in I really want to get to, guys. I want to thank everybody for them. Prince Adam, let's take a look at this one. And I do like how on some of these lots, this image here, the sideways image, to me is kind of that's the secret sauce of these auction listings, or these action figure listings, because it really gives you a great view of the color of the bubble, whereas this one you can't tell as well. Is there anything else you'd like to say about this one?
So look how clear it presents, both from the front and from the side. So prospective bidder would have a lot of information to judge, which you'll never find on eBay or through some of these other sellers. This gives you all the information you need to make a decision, and everybody that collects Masters of the Universe knows how desirable this piece is and how rare this piece is. We have people from all over the world bidding on it right now. There's some Europeans on this one.
Very cool. All right, guys, I'm going to go to some comments here, but jump in if you need to. MLW Fishing Man, always good to see you. Thanks for joining. Dexflow says it will be insane if LCG gets that Kamala variation Hasbro figure. One's on eBay for like $24K. Goes on to say, really curious what that AFA 85 Optimus Prime goes for, since I own an AFA 80. Congrats, Dexflow. And we're going to do a little bit later, we're going to get into what all this grading stuff really means when we get into our sort of educational series during this episode. What's going on, Baz? Good to see you. Welcome to the show, and thanks for dropping by. Dexflow says, I think early starting lineups in high grade or sleepers. Gosh, I wish I didn't dispose of my collection of those. Dennis, were you going to say something there?
I would agree with that 100%. I think it's it's definitely a sleeper piece right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
All right, keeping on going. Hockey Town. My grandmother always told me to take care of my toys and save them because they will be worth money someday. I did not listen. Yeah, and that's why that's why many of them are worth a lot, because we didn't listen. Brandon says, what does lot withdrawn mean? And I'll just leave it at that because there's a couple assumptions there. But what does lot withdrawn mean, Mark?
Those were items that we planned to put in the auction and were en route to us. In fact, the ones that are withdrawn are all from the same consignor. They came from across the border, and we thought we would have them with plenty of time to go. And for whatever reason, weather or whatever, they were delayed. So we had to withdraw those lots. They will be in our next auction if they caught your eye. So we have them in hand at this point, and they'll be in the next auction.
Perfect. The 615 collector says, what does APR 84 mean on the top of the Star Wars slide? Is that the date it was processed? Well, we know it couldn't have been that because it was the slide that was used for the 1977 Star Wars card. But Dennis, I'll turn that over to you and we'll go back to that to take a peek.
Actually, it does probably mean that was the time that it was put on a slide. And that particular card came from Lucasfilm to Kenner, and the Power of the Force line was released in 84. Okay. So it makes sense that they would have gotten it then for that purpose.
Oh, I see. So the cards came out in like 1970. Wait, it says right here, 1977, the card came out, but you're saying that this slide would have been put into this cardboard frame in April of 84.
Correct.
Okay.
So Dennis, just to clarify, the photo, the negative would have been from the from 77. And then
it would have come from Lucasfilm. However, they have kept their film and then sent it to Kenner at this time. And
then they sent it to Kenner presumably years later.
Correct.
And then put the holder on top.
They didn't actually create the figure for Stormtrooper Luke, even though he was in the first film, until last. It was the last release. So that's the reason why it wouldn't have gotten there till later.
Got it. All right. Interesting. Thanks for the question, Doug. And okay, so keeping on going. Dexflow, I love the price tag on the figure more. I think that's a pretty, it seems to be, makes a lot of sense to me that it's nice to know where the figure came from. I think that's really cool. Rage loves the show Toys That Made Us. Me too, Rage. Jake says, all these toys I wish I never played with and had back. I mean, it's so similar to the world of sports cards, right? Where we did, or video games that we all played as kids. We wish we never opened those and played them, but boy, our youth would have been a lot different if we didn't master Super Mario Brothers and Zelda and Metroid and all those games back in the day. Rage says Snake Eyes was dope, but Cobra Twins were up my alley. And Mark Mater, good to see you, Mark. Says LCG is one of the best auctions around. Congratulations, Mark. Great auction. Very nice comment from Mark Mater. Mark, any response from you?
Mark Mater is one of our bidders. I think you would recognize a lot of bidders on a certain item, Jeremy.
Which item would I recognize a lot of bidders?
I'm not at liberty to say, but it's one of our more popular items.
Very cool. All right, nice to hear. Rage says, how much of a difference is it to have the peg unpunched or the hole punched? And I believe what he's asking about is this little J-shaped space right here. If you guys see my mouse, that little J shape there is sometimes it's unpunched, sometimes it's damaged. Dennis, why don't you speak to the what is called the peg, I suppose?
It's actually the my mind goes blank, but the peg hole is what it's called. And the hang tab is another term for it. That area does not go against the grade of the card. So when it comes to the grading aspect, it doesn't go against the grade of the card. So if it's punched or unpunched, regardless, it doesn't hurt the grade because it's been punched. The reason for that is 90% of these toys ended up on a peg back in the day. So it doesn't hurt the value. Doesn't hurt the grade. Does it hurt the value? It could potentially. It depends on the collector. There are collectors who only do unpunched. There are collectors who do only clear bubble. There are collectors who do only unpunched clear bubble. Like they take it to the next level, like their own criteria for collecting. So I wouldn't say it necessarily adds more value. You may have a slight premium, let's say 10% or 20% premium for the right collector on a piece, but it doesn't like make or break a deal for the majority of collectors.
I see. And right here on these two superpowers, I just noticed here, so Wonder Woman has the punch missing, but Cyborg, it seems to still be there. So is that part of the reason why this one's at 806 and this one's at 200? Or I guess we have a straight 85 here versus a 75 up here. So
the rarity of the Cyborg is immensely more than the Wonder Woman for the first piece there. The grade is higher on the Cyborg. So it's kind of a couple of factors, I would say, right there.
All right, very cool. Here's a question for you guys from DexFlow, probably for Mark. Do you guys travel to acquire people's collections to consign or buy for the auction?
We have in the past. Not ideal, but if it's warranted, we'll do what it takes to get the consignment usually. Yeah, we have in the past. We've traveled across the border to get a key piece before. So the answer is yes, but it's a case-by-case basis.
Great. And then Vintage Card Collector. I brought up the same question. He says, I just discovered your site, but I'd suggest in the future to end your auctions in the evening, not the afternoon. You'll have more eyes on it. We talked about this. You've obviously put thought into this, but do you want to just address it? Because, Vintage Card Collector thinks that maybe the evening would be better. What do you, what are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, we did that. That's how we started. And we kind of patterned what we do after the sports card and sports memorabilia auctions. So our early auctions were a later start time, and we received feedback, and the feedback was everybody wanted to start earlier. So that's what we've done. We've changed to this. We've tinkered with, the 10-minute clock versus a 15-minute clock, a hard close versus a lot by lot close. We've basically received feedback along the way and have amended how we've done our closing based on the feedback that we received.
There you go. So they did think about it, and but hey, these things can be fluid and can change as the bidder pool increases and more feedback comes in. Justin Parker has this question: thoughts on the future of the LJN, which is a manufacturer, I just learned that, WWF market?
Yeah, these are awesome pieces. And when we met on Friday, Jeremy, we talked a bit about the quality of the LJN pieces. If you want to pull it up, that Hulk Hogan, somebody won that with one bid. That's a spectacular piece. There's a lot of like everyone wants a certain iconic piece in their collection, whether it be a He-Man, a Skeletor, a Snake Eyes. For wrestling, it's Hulk Hogan. And this one and the Hasbro are it. But these cards are a lot bigger than the Hasbro, and they seem to be a lot higher quality. LJN not only did the WWF, they also did the Thundercats, which are beautiful carded figures. We have a Lion-O in this auction and a couple others. But the LJN lines were really high quality. I think more and more collectors are getting into these, especially crossover collectors. So whether they're coming from comic books or other action figure lines or even sports cards, they're looking at this, they recognize it, they remember it when they were a kid. Darren Ravel is big into the LJN. I guess that's what he remembers when he was a kid, and he collects these. So I think these are great to collect. I don't know if the value is going to increase or not, but I know it's a lot of fun to collect, and they look great, and you'd be happy to have one on your shelf. I could say that.
No doubt. I mean, so you said someone won this at 2,500, but it's not over yet, is it?
Well, one bid going into extended, I believe one bid wins it.
So I could not now. No, I'm not eligible.
Or maybe you can.
But I'm not eligible. I didn't bid at the beginning. Should I try and place a bid here? Is this a good price if I win it?
I mean, I think that's an iconic piece, Jeremy, but that's up to you. I mean, I don't know. Clear bubble Hulk Hogan.
I
don't
cannot
know.
bid. Cannot accept bid. Your bid is not placed prior to the auction end time. So
Unfortunately.
You missed out, Jeremy. You
I
should have
missed
got in there
out.
early.
I got to check on Frogger. Never mind. I got to check on Frogger. What's going on with the here? Here it is. Let's see.
I think he's 570. Yeah.
580, 570. The next bid would be 627. I don't know, fellas. I mean, I just don't know. Like it's cool. 9.6. Tell me about 9.6.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say the video games, especially WATA, they follow along closer to comics than they do for like the VGA did and AFA did for toys. So a 9.6, there's really only one higher, would be a 9.8. There are 9.9s and 10s that exist, but it's very, very rare, especially for an older piece like this. So 9.6 is a very high grade. One thing with WATA too is they break out not only the grade of the box, so the box is a 9.6 in this example. They also break out the grade for the seal, and the seal in this example is an A+. The highest you can get is an A++. Maybe even A++. No, it's just A++, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a very high grade example, 9.6 and A+, especially for the age. This came out in early 80s, 81, 82. So this is a very good high grade example of this.
What does Dennis, where it says here seal rating A+? What is the seal? Is that the cellophane that encompasses the whole thing, or is it a sticker? What is the seal?
It's correct. It's actually a cellophane packaging that goes around it. And the seal, I don't remember on this particular one. I didn't have it in hand. Let me see if I have another. I might even have a Frogger myself. He's historic. The one that I have is like a 9.2 or something. But the cellophane has like it lays over a certain way and has a specific seal to verify that it's a legitimate seal. So this is the grade of that. There you see it on the side there.
Yeah.
Telephone,
so it's really the shrink wrap that's around this whole
itself.
Yeah,
correct.
That's around the box.
So it's a very, very good example shrink wrap and a very good example box in this example. And this is a 9.6. You can look up the population report. I think only for Nintendo still. I don't know if Atari's in there yet, but it's a very high grade example.
Yeah, Jeremy, the only better example you're going to get is a 9.8. That's the only better.
I'm going to throw in one more bid, guys. All right. Is that done? It's in?
Confirmed.
It's confirmed, right?
No.
Oh, here we go. Confirmed. There we go.
Sorry.
Oh, and I'm auto outbid.
Somebody has
Which one of you guys auto outbid me on the Frogger? Come on.
we have somebody that knows the value of that, Jeremy.
Oh gosh. I can go one more. No, I'm gonna sit out. I don't know enough about this yet. I don't know enough about
the iPhone cracked 48K, or that's very exciting. A few minutes ago.
Yeah, so the iPhone has shattered our estimate, and we were pretty conservative, I think, though, with that estimate, Jeremy. 50,000. The last one went for 40, and the feedback that we got after it, people wanted one. Do you have another? Are you going to have one next auction? And we didn't have one. And it wasn't until the last minute that this one came in, where this one, an identical one, first release with the 12 icons on the front instead of 13. So it's the early first release with awesome provenance behind it. We're at 47. So after buyer's premium, we're getting close to 60 now, right, Dennis?
At this point, yeah, it would be. My mind is blank all of a sudden just because you put me on the spot. Thanks.
So that's it from the television show, Jeremy, and you can see the cellophane seal. Everything lines up perfectly. It's the identical. It's the identical one. It's really an exciting piece. It's got a lot of media attention. This particular iPhone has been featured in Forbes, CBS News, Fox Business, CNN. It's got all of that to go with it. So great piece to whoever ends up with this.
Amazing provenance. You can't go wrong there. You know, CC had asked what are the main reputable grading companies for action figures. I figured I would take that one just because I happened to see it real quick. Really, you have three main players in this space. The first being the old school guys, AFA. They've been around a while. They're a great company, Action Figure Authority. Secondly, you would have Collector Archive Services. These guys are based out of Florida, U.S. based as well as AFA. And the third company is called UKG. UKG is based in the UK, and they stand for UK Graders. So these are the three big action figure collectors. They happen to also all delve into video games. And if I'm not mistaken, CAS and AFA both delve into VHS as well. So that they grade pretty much in all of this space.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Dennis. So I'm just scrolling through here to see how some of the items are doing. And we looked at the original comic art up here. So I noticed this lot 22 didn't get a bid. So that means that, you know, it will not sell tonight, but the rest of them seem to have done that. And then I looked and I thought, well, you know, page 11 got a bid. Page 9 didn't. Page 24 did. Page 7 did. Why do you think that is? I'm just page 16 got a bid. Why do you think that would be?
There's a really big
Jeremy, not the case. The items with 0 bids, anybody is eligible to place a bid. Whoever places the first bid wins that item, I believe.
Oh, so
those are still live.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
So
it's still live. We did an email yesterday where it said first bid wins.
So the extended bidding period only applies to items that had bids prior, and if an item only had one bid prior to extended bidding, that'll be over. That person will win that item because no one else is eligible to bid on it. That's a great feature of this software then, because otherwise, I mean, someone might say, hey, I'll take that for $12.50 and put it with these other pages. That's pretty cool. I was listing off these page numbers, then I'm realizing, wait, they're all from different issues. So it's not necessarily many different issues. So that may not be the case, but hey, look at this. Luke Skywalker went from $1,099 up to $1,947 on the slide. So that's nice to see since I last noticed the value. So good for, it still seems like I said to you, Mark, like, how was that not a $25,000 item? You know, I just like, it doesn't make sense, but I guess it's maybe we're early on in this type of collectible.
Yeah.
One thing really cool about this piece is that these actually were in the guy who literally took the pictures for Kenner. These were in his personal collection until 2002, and they'd never seen the light of day, essentially. And in 2002, that's when they first got released into the market, and they were selling for, and God forbid I'd even say this, for $25 and $30 and $50 at the time, and that was like a lot because it was very new then. And now, I mean, obviously now we have one selling for $2,000. I've personally seen like some lower characters, not Luke, for like the figures themselves, like my R2 that I have here with me. This was like a $500 piece instead of like, a $2,000 piece. Has a lot to do with the figure, the character, the provenance, the story that goes with it. If it can be photo matched to a toy catalog or photo matched to a card back, that kind of a thing. Those all are contributing factors for the value in these.
Very cool. Anything else from you, Mark?
I think, the type of items we sell, the pop culture, in some ways we're a little bit behind, like maybe the sports cards and the sports memorabilia, how they're a bit, they're appreciating items like this a bit more than we are, whether it be the type 1 photos, things like that. In the past 2 or 3 years, the photographs and something like this Luke Skywalker have increased in value tenfold in sports memorabilia. So I think, this is going to rise. It's just a matter of when certain people in our space are going to recognize that.
Very cool. Rage here says, how much does a pristine copy of a Nintendo Power Glove or an ROB robot go for? Is that something that either of you are familiar with?
Yeah. So I believe I sold a a Minton box Power Glove for like $250 to $300 last year. Mark, I think it was in one of the groups that you're in. I think I was like around there in that range. It's kind of like one of those things. The condition matters a lot, and the completeness, obviously. And then for a Rob, obviously you do better not only with the Rob, but with the console, the full, they call it the test market NES. If you had an NES test market console with the Rob, I've seen them range from $800 to $1,500 complete. And obviously very pristine examples. You know, the sky's the limit, especially if you get into grading, get a qualified grade with AFA. Who's to say, you know, but there's a really wide range of value because of condition, and every single piece has a condition value when it comes to that. The paperwork that goes with it, the plastic that goes around every single piece, the fact you have it all or not, you're missing one piece or not, it all plays a factor in the value.
Very cool. Okay, Dexflow says LJN in reference to the WWF, the Hulk Hogan figure, was a bit before my time. I was a Hasbro guy, but I am definitely interested in LJN now. Dexflow goes on to encourage me to get that Hulk Hogan piece. It's iconic, hard to find in that grade. And I mean, yeah, I kind of wish that I could have got in on it, but what can you do? You know, I'm relatively new to the world of action figures as far as, you know, thousands of dollars. But I want to share with you guys. So, Mark, you'll remember when I had you on Sports Cards Live on Friday, I showed you my unopened Star Wars figures from 97, 96, 97, 98 in there. Well, they are no longer unopened. My 4-year-old got his hands on these this morning. Awesome. My 4-year-old got his hands on these this morning. He took the land speeder out. He comes up to wake me up. He's got the land speeder out of the box with these guys sitting in it. And I'm like, Mason, what are you doing? He's like, well, Mommy said. I'm like, what are you talking? Mommy didn't say. So I now don't have any unopened Star Wars figures anymore. Now, one thing I want to mention when this was opened, say again, Dennis.
We need to rectify that. I can help you.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed is that when they open it up, notice how the C3PO it's a sticker, and it's literally a sticker that I see now was on that they just put on the card. So when Kenner made these, they had one generic backing, and then they just put the character sticker on it, which I don't like as much as what we're seeing on these vintage pieces where it was all printed on. But the backs are still cool, you know?
Yeah. It was a quick and nitty-gritty way to get the card backs printed out in large volume.
Of course. And then I showed this to Mark on Friday too, but Dennis, I don't know if you saw, but this is my Florsheim Shoes box of Star Wars figures, and literally like it's deep. Like
that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So after, talking to you guys and Mark and LCG, I dug this out of my storage, and I'm going to have some fun with this now again, because I used to have these things set up on, I used to have one of those like big shelving units from IKEA that had like 3 different like cubbies in it. I had 3 of them in my old house, and I'd have each of them with a different scene, whether it was like starting lineups or Star Wars figures or whatever I had in there, bobbleheads. I used to put the Star Wars. I had like 9 Imperial Troopers, and I could do the whole setup. So
I have cool. My original R2D2 from when I first started collecting in 2005. Somebody had given him to me, and they just, for whatever reason, I looked at him like, that's pretty freaking cool. And then it kind of led to a little bit of that up there, a little bit of crazy R2 love. So yeah. It
How can you not love R2D2 though? I mean,
he's the best character out of all the films for me.
He's in all the films too.
Every single film, yeah. He's got a dirty mouth. They have to bleep him out. It's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, nothing not to like there about R2D2. That's for sure. Jeremy, we got another bid on the iPhone over $60,000 with buyer's premium.
So it's up to $52,797. The buyer's premium is what, 20%, Mark?
Yes, 20%.
So you can add another 10.5 or so to that. So yeah, you're over $63,000 now. So that's a even on the thumbnail that we used for this episode, it said records will be broken. Well, we were right. Records have been broken. So that's really cool. And maybe with some, I'm sure there'll be some media coverage on this in the coming days, Mark, and maybe or maybe not, that will have an effect of more of these coming out of the woodwork. And if I'm the winner of this, I'm going to think, well, I hope not. But at the same time, if I'm the underbidder, and you kind of want there to be another one, and there's probably more than one underbidder here, so you never know what could happen if a couple more come to light.
Yeah, I mean, this one's a really special one because it's the one that received all the media attention. So who knows if the next one's going to receive, similar? Are you going to have all that to pair it with? I mean, to me as a collector, like that makes a piece really special when you have it on national TV and you see it in national publications and you own that item. That makes it a special piece, and that's what this one is.
For sure. Yeah, that's I agree. The provenance is so important on any collectible, really. And I guess some it's more than others, but in this case, having it is really cool. And because it's somewhat of an emerging collectible market as well. So nice to have that behind it for sure. Rage asked a follow-up question here for you, Dennis. Does unpunched or should unpunched carry a premium?
Yeah, it can in certain scenarios, but it has a lot to do with the buyer more than the seller. You just happen to find somebody who wants to spend a little bit more on an unpunched specifically. I've seen them go up in auction, like I said, maybe 1.1, 1.2x, like just a little bit more, 10 to 20% premium. But also there's plenty of ones that go under the radar that are unpunched too. So it happens.
And here's a question from Dexflow regarding bubbles on action figure cards. He says, Mark or Dennis, how concerned should I be of the sealing for the bubble on the card backing? They deteriorate over time. I've had the bubble detached from card backing on figures before.
So I would highly recommend, this is where grading comes into play a lot. Specifically, I've used AFA and Collector Archive services for this, and they actually have bubble protectors. And it's actually, for Star Wars, they have like at Collector Archive Services, CAS, they have a vacuum-formed bubble protector that actually goes over the entire bubble that's formed to the bubble. And they have all the different bubble variations for the first 21 figures, if I'm not mistaken. That will actually then be encapsulated whenever it's graded in a way that bubble's never going to come off of the card. It's just not going to happen. And AFA does an acrylic bumper around the figure to protect that from happening too. And they put that bumper, for lack of a better term, up against the bubble and up against the card in such a way that it holds it in place and it's not going to come off either. And it protects the bubble also from in transit when you send something. It has probably, a 95% success rate versus like maybe a 90% success rate. It's only a little bit, marginally better success rate. But really, in the end, for protection of it falling off the card, I store a lot of my mock on their back when I don't have them displayed. I swap out my display all the time. So I lay them on their back. I mean, maybe it's just me being paranoid. I don't know. That's just
sounds smart, actually.
Years of collecting, I guess.
So, Jeremy, a lot of the Transformers, especially the cars, are stored facing up. So the car is facing up. So there's no additional pressure weighing down the piece within the bubble. And then, same with some of the action figures. The Hulk Hogan that you're interested in actually has a bubble protector around the perimeter. Dennis mentioned that, but specifically that Hulk Hogan, if you were to zoom in, it's got a very thin, it's around the bubble, maybe around the top of it. Do you see that? It looks like it's line, but it's actually a thin protector that's pinning it down in case it were to pull off the card.
You can see it's like an extra layer on the outside. It's just barely there, but it's there to protect the bubble from falling off the card.
Oh, wow. And is that from the manufacturer or is that from the grading company?
Grading company.
The grading company. In fact, the consignor asked us to include that in the description because, a lot of collectors, for a nice piece like this, that's an enhancement.
Well, look right here. The CAS has outfitted the piece with a laser-thin acrylic bubble protector, ensuring the plastic bubble will never lift from the card. I mean, sounds like Dexflow knows what he's like. That's a very astute question that Dexflow brought about, and says, nice to know. And it's good that there's a service out there to really help protect these pieces, because they're so valuable, if for no other reason.
It's
Jeremy,
collectors like us, though, like the guys that are thinking about, like, hey, I don't want this to happen in the future.
Yeah,
Jeremy,
sure.
when you get your first piece, when you get your first graded piece and you get that acrylic, you're gonna see how spectacular these pieces look. I remember when I got mine, I was just like you. I had not had one before. Came in the mail, displayed it. It looked spectacular, and I was all in on this stuff.
Oh God. Oh no, what have I gotten myself into here? All right. Here's a question from Vintage Card Collector about the iPhone. I'm gonna bring this one up on the screen. It says, do you guys think there's any risk of an unopened iPhone find? If more of these are discovered, it's in my view, the price will really drop. Extremely risky in my view. So we did talk about this the other day, Mark, but let's go to this one again.
Yeah, I would say that the news has kind of made its rounds. We had a $35,000 sale in August that made some news, and then our sale of $39,000 in October made big news. It doesn't get any bigger than the Wall Street Journal. So it made headlines back then. It was, on television. It was on Fox Business before. You name it. It was in Rob Report. It was on ArtNet. This made its rounds, and I thought the same that the question had, was that we would have the potential to receive, a flood of these, and it didn't happen. At least it didn't happen with the very first release. So I feel like if there were boxes of these, they would have come out by now. There may be a small chance, but I think that, I think the news has made its rounds, and they're not popping up. I don't know.
I suppose, to be fair, there's probably always going to be that risk, but that risk exists. That same risk exists with all collectibles, I would have to think. So, there could be a box of R2-D2 sitting in someone who used to own a toy store somewhere in Wyoming, and it's sitting in the attic, just like we hear with baseball cards. So I think that risk is equal among most collectibles, comics even.
Yeah, I think we would be the first to know if there was a find, because when you have these type of sales, that's who, if I'm somebody that's selling, I would contact the person that's sold it for a record price. So I think, we have some good information on these, and it hasn't happened yet, and we'll see. But I can tell you that there's different, variations of these iPhones. The first release is the one that's going for big money, and this may create a market for the second release and the third release. And the iPhone 4, I believe, was a big kind of remodel that people waited in line for. And maybe this creates an interest in Apple products. We'll see, as collectibles.
We will see. Dexful makes a comment that I place my action figures on their back also. So very smart way to handle that, Dexful. Unless you already are a seasoned collector of these, and if you are, I'd love to see your collection sometime. Sounds really I just love it. Dennis, I need you to tell me though, because I mentioned to my wife, I need to know if we're gonna let my son eat the rest of the week. Was this worth anything before it was opened?
No, unfortunately. $7 to $15 maybe. Yeah.
Greedo? What about Greedo, my boy?
I can literally send you those two if you want them that bad. I have a handful. I have like a storage unit full that I bought last year. So legit. So
this is what I really find interesting, and for everyone who's watching who is a sports card person first before pop culture like myself, and I talked to Mark about this, it seems to me like these figures here are like the junk wax of sports cards, right, Dennis? Does that make like this is like the pro set and the upper deck of the early 90s?
Yeah.
Score and all that sort of stuff. Is anything you can expand on that? Is this like junk wax?
So what's interesting about it is that the value has not hit, and I don't know that it ever really will hit per se. I think that like they knew how well they did in the 70s, and they said, oh, this is going to be really good. We're going to really make out on this. And they went kind of overboard. And I find that like literally I bought a collection from a guy here, even local to me, randomly, who had a Star Wars collection. He had a small tub of vintage, and then he had 2 entire 10 by 12 storage units full of just green card Star Wars and Episode 1, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, that kind of merchandise. And he said that whenever he did it, him and his cousin were buying the cases as they came out, multiples. So he has like 120 Boba Fett's 12 inches.
Yeah.
He just bought them all. And I think a lot of people did that when this happened, thinking that the value was going to be the same in the 70s, 80s. So there's a lot of, I don't want to say overproduction, but potentially overproduction of these pieces.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, I want to go to Mark. Were you going to jump in with something?
I was going to say also, like in the coming into the 90s, collectibles became a thing, whereas before it wasn't really a thing. So like the Nintendo games from the 80s, the toys from the 80s, people weren't saving them. But then, cards became valuable and became very collectible coming into the 90s. And it was like in the 90s, everybody started saving what they had. I have a 1988 Topps box set that I bought from KB Toys because I thought it was, in 20 years, my mom bought it for me, and it was like $50 back in '89. And it was $50 then, but 20 years later, it's going to be $10,000 because everything was going to that. So the same idea, people were buying things and holding them. And that's what they may have been doing with like the mid 90s Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm looking at the VHS here because, as well as the Froggers at $7.59, but the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles highest graded VHS at $1,609. I mean, I don't know what many comps might have been, but that seems like a healthy price for a VHS Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Listen, I say it seems like I don't know anything about it, so I shouldn't even say that, but I'm impressed, if nothing else, by that price right there. How about you, Mark?
I think it's low for the highest graded, and this is a special variant. It's the Alliance release, which I believe is a Canadian release. So I think it's the most desirable release of that particular movie. And on the side, if you want to go to it, Jeremy, to check it out, on the side of it, they have the turtle head watermarks, which is really unique. On one of the sides, if you click on it, does it have the turtle head? No, this one has the Alliance watermarks. The other picture, you'll see a lot of times these watermarks are faded and whatnot. These are perfect. I mean, this is like fresh out of a case, Jeremy, and you just don't see this with this particular release.
Interesting. Really cool.
Yeah, it's the highest graded copy that Beckett has graded.
Very, very neat. $1,500 almost for Rocky, but you can get into Top Gun or Indiana Jones or Gremlins for around that $300 to $500 mark. I want to bring up Vintage Card Collector's comment here about the iPhone. Says, good comment. The difference might be the phone is only 15 years old, not 40 to 50 years old, like many other collectibles. And I think that actually supports my thought that there's less likely of a chance then for there to be an iPhone, because it'd be much more top of mind for people to think about. Yeah, it's only 15 years old. You're going to remember you had it. There's a less likely chance of, there's a more likely chance that you're going to find, an old house with an attic filled with collectibles from the 30s or 40s or the 1910s even, where a house has sold several times and now you're finding a bunch of T206s. Whereas with the iPhone, yeah, it's only 15 years. You're going to probably remember. And the people that would have been in those businesses probably are aware, likely are watching Fox Business or reading the Wall Street Journal or whatever. So I think the fact that You guys, Mark, you said there was a sale for 30-something thousand last summer. There was your sale in October for 40-something thousand. Now we're about to hit 60,000, or we have. I mean, I'm surprised that there haven't been more coming out of the woodwork. Or I guess it surprises me, but it also tells me that, yeah, there may not be that many more. There may not be a find to be had.
Also, think about how expensive these were. These were $600 each. These weren't, something that was junk and you just throw them away. People that had these used them. So, and when they were released, we didn't know that they would become what they ended up becoming, where they became ubiquitous in society. I mean, we didn't know if this would catch on or not. So to have the foresight to save one was extremely unlikely, and to have them and just not use them, it doesn't make sense based on the price point.
There's another factor too, is that they didn't offer financing on these phones. If you guys recall, you had to have the money up front. So it's kind of an elitist thing to have an iPhone. I had one, and I sold a bunch of Star Wars to buy it. I literally sold like 30 or 40 mock at the time to buy an iPhone. I was all about it. And I remember I got like the 4 gig, and I was happy as a mother on 2G, like the slowest internet in the world. It was like the most amazing thing.
No, it was actually the Edge network.
Yeah, it was Edge. You're right. Edge is 2G. Yeah, same. It was very slow, painful on so many levels.
Yeah, and so if you were like a business owner that sold these things, then I don't know that you could have. You might have had to be an Apple store or one of the
AT&T was the only place you could get them back then. You couldn't buy them from Apple at the time. Yeah,
so if you had them and they didn't sell, you likely return them to get your money back from your distributor versus just stashing them away or selling them, at a deep discount. And they were such a hot, I believe, if I recall, they were such a. I came in with the iPhone 2. That was my first one. I wasn't quite as elite as Dennis was back in the day, but I mean, you weren't just going to let them sit and rot or hide them in an attic somewhere, to forget about for 80 years. So the more I think about it, and with Vintage Card Collectors, great comments, the more I think, maybe there aren't many more out there to be had. Like there could be half a dozen. Who knows? I'm just guessing. But by now, you'd think people would know about it.
It would have to be like a factory find or something, in my opinion.
I think the ones that are out there, though, that they're not going to be in good condition. I have seen a few that are. I mean, we got 1,000 calls. So there was a huge response, and 99.9% of them were opened iPhones. And we did see some others sealed. The problem was the condition is not something that that was of the quality to put into our auctions. We're not going to put a piece that's, a PSA 1 version of an iPhone into our auction. That's not it. So to find something in acceptable condition, still factory sealed, is I think it's going to be extremely tough going forward. And if we see them, I think we're going to see them early on, Jeremy.
Yeah, like that sort of all makes sense to me. I'm just kind of scrolling now through looking at these Transformers, and now I'm looking at the hang tab or the punch tab, and punched out, price tag, not punched out, not, and punched out. So if I'm a collector, I'm thinking to myself, do I want uniformity? So I'll ask you guys the question, maybe you, Dennis, because I mean you're certainly an action figure expert, but in the communities that you are a part of, whether it's Transformers or G.I. Joe or Star Wars, do collectors prefer the uniformity of saying I want only ones with punched out or only ones without punch with the hang tab still in there, or do they not care?
It's all about the collector. It's all about the buyer in that respect. There's a very small subset of collectors that literally will only do clear bubble, unpunched, straight 85s without a price tag. Like that kind of collector exists, right? Mm-hmm. And there's other collectors that literally don't care about anything unless the bubble is perfect. The card could be bent in half or cut. You can have cut cards, which is a pretty common thing. But if the bubble is perfect, then I'm golden because it's still sealed. And then you have other guys who are like, you know what, as long as the card lays perfectly flat. So it has a lot to do with the collector, their price point when they get in, and then as they evolve in their collecting too, it makes a big difference. I started off with like unpunched was my goal with no price tag, and I definitely deviated from that because I went crazy in a lot of ways. So it depends on how much you stick to your guns. Personally, they will get a premium, like in a really nice example without a price tag, unpunched, beautiful clear bubble. You're gonna win. You know.
So on this group of 8 here, it looks like lot 226 and 228 are without price tag and without the punch. And this one's a 1209. This one's a 535. This one, you know, I guess you got to take into account other things like condition and the figure itself. So I can't really make that comparison, but it's interesting to see that, you know, that collector you mentioned might be interested a lot in these 2 items here. Probably this one for sure, because it's an AFA 90, where 75 seems to be a bit of a lower grade. Can you give me or tell me what the parallel to sports card grading would be? Like an AFA 75, what would that be in sport, like the equivalent in sports cards?
Probably a PSA 7.
Or any grading company for that matter.
PSA 7, BGS 8. Something along those lines. It's not a poor example by any means. Pretty much 75 and up is kind of the sweet spot for graded pieces. So you're not going to see many 60s. You're not going to see many 50s because people just don't submit them. For instance, like a Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck rookie, you're not going to see many PSA 6 or 7. You're going to see 8, 9s, and 10s. It follows that parallel.
And how come on some of them we see the side angle view, but this one I don't see the side angle that shows the bubble?
Because the ones that show the bubble is a very, very prominent part of that figure. Some action figures, it's less important. Like the ones that we're showing the bubble on, the Skeletor, the He-Man, that's a big time value increase if it's got a spectacular bubble. Something like this, not as much. You can basically take the subgrade, which you see on the tag. It's the middle grade. This one's a 90. So a 90 is a very, very strong bubble / blister grade. You can be rest assured that you're getting a very, very nice bubble with a 90 subgrade.
So we've got card bubble figure here, C, B, and F. Okay. We're learning, guys. We are learning. I love it. I love learning about this stuff. And I hope that, you know, I feel like we have part of the audience is going to be the LGC customers that you reached out to, Mark, or, you know, your company reached out to via email to let them know that we were doing the show. And then we're going to have some Sports Cards Live viewers who are going to be interested in just learning. And that's the group I fall into, is learning about this. And, you know, so it's like, I'm thinking to myself here, you know, I'm prone to wanting to collect these things because I just think they're so cool. Part of me is like, oh, I wish that I knew a bit more, or I was, you know, in on the action this time, because next time, you know, these things are probably going to come and get more and more popular over the next couple of years, is my feeling on it. So I wish I was just like Dustin and I think Dexflow were saying they were waiting for the next one. I'm kind of the same way. Like the three of us should start a new group or something, because we're kind of, I feel like I'm learning it as we go. I think Dexflow might be the resident expert in the chat here, but never mind you two on the screen with me who are much more advanced. But it's fun. And, you know, I just, you always want to get in as early as you can is where I'm coming from here.
We're going to see that Hulk Hogan at $10,000 the next time it pops up, Jeremy.
Oh, come on, Mark. But I know you're not kidding. That's the thing. JP, what's going on? Good to see you again 2 days in a row. Yep. Learning. Right, JP? I mean, I want to ask you, JP, because I know JP is a card guy. I know JP. My question to JP and anyone else out there, if you're a Sports Cards Live, regular viewer, listener, are you willing to dabble in this kind of stuff? Do you like this kind of content on the Sports Cards Live channel? Are you wanting to learn about these types of things? And I'm asking because I would, and I'm just wondering how much I have in common with my own audience. So I asked that question to some of you guys. If you'd let me know, I'd be really curious. CC here says, very cool items. When will the next auction occur? There's a great question. Mark, what do you have planned for the next auction? Is there a timeline for it yet?
We're shooting for a spring premiere auction, probably to kick off in late May, maybe early June. These items are extremely difficult to source. There's very few quality pieces. It's very important that our auctions, the inventory is a quality inventory that you won't find in other marketplaces. I mean, we have, like we were telling Jeremy, the Motu offering, that's a world-class collection. This Transformers, they're called mini bots. This is from a world-class collection. It took years to get these figures. You're not going to see it anywhere else. We have over 40 AFA 85 Transformers. That's never been done by any auction house.
It's insane.
So, this stuff is tough to source. We do our best to get it to you guys, and we're going to put the next premiere auction together as soon as possible. And we're hoping for a spring premiere, maybe in late May.
But you're not running like in the sports card world. We're running monthly auctions. PWCC does a weekly auction on top of their monthly premiere. You've got all the other companies that are doing regular auctions monthly, if not every second month or quarterly. In this collectible space, you can't source the product enough to have that frequency, can you?
Right. It's similar to like quality memorabilia, game worn memorabilia, where you could, certain companies, they can do 2 or 3 auctions a year because you can't put that stuff out every month. There's not enough of it that can be sourced. And like I said, 95% of this stuff is purchased by collectors, not people looking to flip, not speculators. It's going into collections. So the only time a collector is going to get rid of his stuff is, if he's looking to upgrade is one thing. If he's looking to switch it out and get something different, but it's usually not financially motivated for the most part. You can offer these guys way over market, and they're not going to part with it. That with sports cards, Jeremy, there's certain special pieces that you can't get off of guys. You've got to come, with something ridiculous to get it off of them. And it's the same thing here.
Yeah, you have to come in at sometimes you literally have to give an offer they can't refuse. I know I have pieces like that they're not available, but if you make me an offer I can't refuse, I'd probably do it because it's an offer that I can't refuse, but it might be so much higher than what it might sell for at open auction, but I don't really care. It's like, yeah, it's not available. Not, some people will say, yeah, but the last one sold for $50,000. You won't take 55. Like, no, I don't want. I want the item. You offer me 500,000, we'll talk, but I'm not selling it for 10% over the last comp or that sort of thing. And like you said, these things get locked away for so long that, hey, if nothing else, we know that you've got about the lot withdrawn items are at least going to be in the next auction. So there are some that are coming all from the same consignor. So that's pretty nice to know that, you've got at least the seeds of the next auction already kind of en route.
Yeah.
All right, let's do some more comments here. And I'm going to go right over to this one from Vintage Card Collector. Says, is there a grading company that demands the highest price like PSA does in sports cards? Do people buy figures from one company and have a different company grade it to increase the value, what we would call a crossover? And Dennis, maybe you, unless Mark, you want to, but Dennis, why don't you touch on this one? and I think you're going to be signing off shortly.
Yeah, I am. So there are the oldest company is AFA, so Action Figure Authority. They've been around the longest. They're the guys that do the VGA 2 for the video games and such. There are people that prefer AFA items, and there are people that will literally buy a CAS graded item just to cross it over to AFA. But vice versa too. There's guys who prefer the new cast, the new guys on the block. They've been around since 2016, I want to say. So the other guys are 2001, I want to say. So it's a big difference in time in the market, but they hit the ground running and they have a lot of pieces in the market. They graded a lot of pieces quickly, and they have pretty good customer service, and they're the only ones doing loose graded right now. So it kind of puts them in a different place in the market overall, CAS. So it's kind of a toss up, to be honest with you.
I like the idea of loose graded, especially since now I only have loose graded figures because my boy ripped into my last 3 remaining unopened ones this morning. And my wife said, well, it's your fault. You left them out. Yeah, but I didn't expect him to come into my office down here and rip into them this morning. But I should have known. I should have known. Well, all right. With that, Peter Garcia has joined us. I see him in the back room. We're going to bring him on momentarily. Dennis, is that it for you? Are you going to sign off?
I can hang around if you guys want me to. I'm good. Up to you.
What do you think, Mark? How do you want to do this?
Yeah, let's switch Dennis and Peter. Let's give Peter some time, and we'll see if Dennis is still available later.
Yeah, so Dennis, I'm just going to remove you from the screen, but if you want to hang out and watch, you can just do it in the back room, and we can bring on a little bit later if we need to. So I'm gonna take you out. So sorry, before we bring on Peter, if you can just be patient for another couple of minutes. We had a bunch of responses to my question out to the chat. So I don't want to, I want to get to that first, if that's okay with everybody. You cool with that, Mark?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. Dennis, I'm going to take you out. We'll see you again shortly. So right here, Drab Gaming, welcome to the show, says Crazy Auction Guys. Dexflow, I'm loving this as much as cards. JP says, yes, absolutely. I connect to these toys from my childhood. Jake Dahl loves this content. Beavis Card says, heck yes, there's not much content like this. I love sports cards, but also Star Wars, AFA, loose vintage. Awesome, Beavis. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And everyone else so far as well. Now, Huggin says, love this stuff. Already dabbling. Have a Prime AFA 80 and Storm Shadow AFA 85. Dexflow says, all my Transformers are AFA 80 or higher, but not selling for now. Hockey Barn says, I have a small toy collection. Enjoy picking up childhood memories while out picking for hockey memorabilia. Keep the content coming. Thank you, Hockey Barn. Drob Gaming says, people are loving toys, and clearly there's a lot further the market can grow. And then JP says, the unopened toys aspect has always blown my mind. Did not have the foresight nor the constitution to not play with these as a kid. Nor did I, JP. Same boat as you are in. Drob says, if I have a high-grade iPhone to sell, what's the best way to do so? And Vintage Card Collector says, love this content, Jeremy. Glad you do. Thank you, Vintage. All right. So with that, let's bring on Peter Garcia, who I am meeting for the first time right now. Peter Garcia, welcome to Sports Cards Live on YouTube and the LCG Winter Premiere Pop Culture Extended Bidding Watch Party. How are you, Peter?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Jeremy and Mark. And hi, Dennis, even though you're not here. Sorry to miss you.
He's smiling in the back. I can, Dennis, I still see you. Well, Peter, it's a pleasure to meet you. And you know, Mark, maybe you want to do an intro of Peter since you know you brought him on, but there's certainly some interesting things about Peter when it comes to the crossover between both sports cards and action figures. Why don't you let us know what that is, Mark?
Peter and I have become good buddies in the past 2 years or so. I think we had some parallels that we kind of started with sports and with sports cards. Peter was collecting some other stuff when we first met. He saw our auction and really, he, like just like me and just like you're going to be, Jeremy. It really spoke to him, and he's amassed an amazing collection thus far. Just like his ladies, he's always looking for 10s. He's looking for the best, the best quality pieces, and I think it's going to be interesting to speak to Peter because he's going to relate to your audience, Jeremy.
Well, that's great. And I think, I did have my main question for you, Peter, is now we're aware that you are a previous owner of one of the 3 PSA 10 1952 Topps Mickey Mantles. And I mean, obviously that tells me that you are a collector who likes nice things. You like great pieces, but you're also into toys and action figures now. So I guess my question is, can you sell me on action figures? Because I'm a card guy. So you and I have that in common.
Right.
But I'm also, I'm an 80s kid. Look, I'm even wearing this for this episode. I'm wearing my old Nintendo remote control Keep It Real t-shirt just because it's nostalgic for me, as is this episode. But what is it from you, Peter? Like, talk about why do you love both sports cards and action figures?
So I got into this by accident. We played with all this stuff when we were kids, and I didn't even think this stuff was out there. And then I met Mark. He was always very professional, answered my questions quickly. He was always very genuine and honest. And I just kept digging, doing my research. And all of a sudden, I'm neck deep, not even knee deep. I'm neck deep, thinking about all the stuff I had when I was a kid, or I couldn't have when I was a kid. And I wanted to replace, everything that I played with when I was a child. Or I wanted to get stuff that my parents maybe couldn't afford or we couldn't get our hands on. So now here I am on a podcast for the first time ever. And, I just can't get enough of it. Every time I look at it, I think about playing with it when I was a child, and it was just so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing. I think that what you're just describing there is nostalgia, but you added a layer to the standard nostalgia, that layer being maybe what we couldn't afford when we were younger and that we wanted to have, but we couldn't. And I mean, that's the case for me in a lot of my sports card pursuits is, I remember getting my $2 a week allowance and getting 8 packs of cards for 25 cents each when other kids in my class were getting a whole box every weekend of cards, 24, 36 packs. They finished their set way faster than I would. And then there's action figures. I remember I would only get 1 or 2, 3 or 4. I had friends that had the whole set, the big Millennium Falcon play set. I never got to have that. I did have the play set that had the, what was the room? The garbage room, the garbage compactor room that they were all stuck in, I forget which of the 3 Star Wars first Star Wars movies it was, but they're all, and the walls are closing in on them and there's all the garbage in there and they're trying to, Chewie kind of holds the walls with his arms. And I remember I had that toy as a kid and it was filled, the garbage were little pieces of foam that were in there to reflect the garbage. But I mean, that's what this is about, right? It's about the nostalgia and reminding us of those early days and the fact that these things are so rare and the fact that they have become a part of culture. We say pop culture, but it's so true. These characters, they are going to endure, it feels like, forever. Just riff off of that if you can. Like, what are your thoughts on how long are these IPs going to last as far as you're concerned?
I'm really not too sure. I was talking to a friend of mine that recently, back when we were kids, remember when you would actually hold the plane, hold the figurine, and you would play with them? Kids don't do that anymore. They don't sit there and hold the figure and imagine what they're going to do with it like they used to. So I don't know the answer to that, but I guess as long as they're pumping out Transformer movies and I don't know, Marvel movies and stuff like that, kids can relate to it. I guess one good analogy I can give you is none of us have ever seen Ty Cobb. We've never seen Mickey Mantle, but I remember always wanting to, own a Mickey Mantle card or a Mooly Maze card. Well, I think maybe one day kids are going to say, well, I never saw Lion-O. Who's Lion-O? Who's He-Man? But somehow they're going to connect to these characters. And as Mark knows, I don't do it for the money. He said something earlier, you can offer me, or you said it too, Jeremy, you can offer me 10 times what it's worth. I do it because I love it, because I enjoy it, because I can talk to you, I can talk to Mark, I can talk to whoever it may be that I can relate to about these toys, where we can remember when we were children just playing with them. So I don't know value wise how it's going to be in 10, 20, 30 years, but as a collector, I'm not too concerned with it. You're going to bury me with this stuff, or I'm going to pass it along to somebody else who could enjoy it.
Yeah. Hey, for the hockey fans out there, how many of you think Mark looks like Sidney Crosby? Okay, keeping on going though, because you just get an angle I just saw you, and I'm like, wow, am I on the screen with Sidney Crosby right now?
I'm younger than Sidney Crosby.
Oh, you're younger than Sidney Crosby. Wow, good for you. Good.
Right, Peter.
Right.
So, one of the things I'm thinking of back to what you said at the beginning there, Peter. I wonder, and another great question. I think it's a great question to ask everybody who's watching is how much of your pursuit of collectibles today are because you had them as a kid and you opened them and played with them, and now you'd like to get them back, versus how much of it are items that you coveted when you were younger, but for whatever reason were not able to get, and you want to have them now to kind of close the circle on them from when you were a kid. Let's start with you on that question, though, Peter. How much of it for you is one versus the other? For
me, I'm trying to replace almost everything I had as a child. That's my priority. Now, I can't quantify the percentage of, do I want to buy more? I don't know what the percentage is, but I prefer to buy what I had as a child first, and then I want to buy the items that I could never own. I don't want to say it's the backseat, but again, my priority is replace what I had as a kid first. I'm not trying to complete a set. I'm not trying to get every Transformer known to mankind. I just want to have what I can connect with, what I enjoyed playing with as a child. I can remember, I can tell a story, or my buddies walk in the house are like, oh my God, you got this? I cannot believe you had this. I had this when I was a kid. Or I had a friend of mine, he walked in the house, he goes, I remember this. I had a Defiant. It's a large G.I. Joe piece. He goes, I had that when I was a kid. I was like, man, we could never afford that piece. And it was cool just to hear him say, I remember that. We tore that thing apart and played with it, and who knows where it went. And he goes, look at this. You even have it in your living room now. So I hope that answered your question clearly.
Yeah.
I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but
perfectly perfect. How about you, Mark?
One thing that I like about this stuff, and I don't know if Peter appreciates it the same way I do, but I remember just the toys loose and playing with the toys, and that's how I remember them. But I don't really remember how they were in the store. So to see them in brand new in the box, like that makes it super special to me.
See, and for me, I remember going to the stores, looking at them, and all these beautiful toys that I just couldn't get all of them. So that's, for me, I think a lot of it isn't as much replacing as it is buying and coveting the things that I wasn't able to get when I was younger. And, there are some things just that I do want to have that I did have as well, of course. Peter, I'm going to ask you two questions. I'm going to pose them to you now. You can think about them for a second while I go to a couple of comments, but I want to know, number one, what are a couple of your favorite lots in tonight's LCG auction? And of course, are you bidding, or have you already won something in it? Actually, we'll just get to them right now. Are you bidding on anything tonight that you're willing to talk about?
So I am bidding, but I can't give away my secrets yet.
I understand.
But if you ask me later on, I'm happy to tell you everything. I'm pretty transparent, but you gotta give me an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I'll spill my guts.
All right. Sounds good. And what about in this question, there might be some overlap, but in the event there isn't, is there anything in the auction that you really, really like, but you're not in on because you already have it, or for some other reason?
I really, really like that Snake Eyes explosion back. I mean, that's a really awesome piece. It's unique too. I'm not an expert in G.I. Joes. I'm learning still. I am collecting some, but everyone's got a budget. You can't have it all. And that's what makes you look forward to the next auction. And then you're saving, for the next auction. But that G.I. Joe piece, that's really cool. I mean, there's so many good pieces. I told Mark, I said to him, if you had a showroom, I'd be in a lot of trouble, because even the items that I don't collect, I know I would want, just because I don't like Mark just touched on something I never thought about. I don't remember walking into a Toys R Us and looking at the racks. I remember walking down the aisles, but I don't remember seeing just thousands of toys everywhere. So he makes a good point. And now that you can see them in their original package, it looks really cool and they're beautiful. All the artwork, all the detail that goes into them, they really are like little pieces of works of art.
So how much sort of damage have you done in the last couple of years since you've gotten into toys and action figures? And by I don't mean money spent. I mean, how many pieces do you have in your collection now? What's your favorite category? Are you collecting all of the different categories that are available?
I don't know how many pieces I have. It's probably 150 to 250 pieces. I don't know. And because I'm trying to replace what I had as a kid, it ranges from Ninja Turtles to G.I. Joes to Masters of the Universe, Voltron. Did I already say Thundercats? I mean, I'm all over the board. I mean,
are they all graded? Is everything graded?
Everything, 100%. It's really difficult to buy ungraded. It really, really is. You know, if you want to roll the dice, that's fine. But it's really difficult to get on eBay or to go online and buy something ungraded and hope that you can trust that it hasn't been altered. Whereas when you go through LCG Auctions or you talk to Mark or his team, they're always very honest. They're always very direct. You never have to worry about their integrity. And I think it'd be beneath their team to not give you the proper guidance. So I have a lot of faith and trust in this auction house, and I look forward to their auction. That's really the only one I look forward to anymore, because I know what they put out there is the best.
Are you still interested in collecting sports cards as well?
Not nearly as much. I used to be heavily into it. I still have a lot of stuff, but I just, you know what it is? I don't connect with it anymore. I mean, I have some pretty cool stuff, but I look at it, but I never watched Joe Jackson play. I mean, I've heard about him, you know, I've seen 8 Men Out, you know, I mean, I know he was in a Cracker Jack box, but I cannot connect with that stuff. It's beautiful. I mean, I love it, but I can connect with this stuff. I can remember playing with these things when I was a child, when I was a kid. I remember my mom taking me somewhere and going, oh, I want that. You know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. A collector's dream says, would love to hear about his PSA 10 Mickey Mantle. So why don't you tell us the story behind that card that you owned for a period of time?
So when I was a child, we couldn't afford one. Obviously, they were really expensive. I'm 40. I'll be 44 in about a month or two. And I remember finding one for $3,300. My dad was like, you're crazy. That was like in 1985 or 6, which I don't know what that equates to now. But when I got older, I was in an opportunity to buy one. So I bought one like 2001 or 2 from Craig Roehrig. And it was a card that I could never afford, never get my hands on. eBay had just started. You know, nowadays you can find almost anything you want, or you're 2 or 3 people away from finding something, right? But I just I ran into Brian Drent from Mile High in Houston, and I asked him, who has this card? He was like, there's 3 of them. He was like, Marshall Fogel has one. Who has the other one? Tom Candiotti had the other one, and then Craig selling the other one. So I met with Craig at some point, I can't recall, made a deal with him over the phone, flew to California and picked it up, and had it for a few years, and it's beautiful. You know, sometimes I have seller's remorse, but then sometimes I think to myself, you know what, I'm enjoying what I'm doing now, and I'm sure whoever has it really hopefully they really love it, and they enjoy it for until the next caretaker has it.
Do you know who has it now?
I think I know, but I don't know. That card right there from my knowledge, has never been seen since I sold it. I don't even know how many years ago it was. Maybe 17 years ago.
And there's there's a name. Mark had sent me something about it. I think on PSA's website there's an article, and the card, that specific Mickey Mantle 52 Topps in a PSA 10 holder, has been given a name, just like the Gretzky, McNall, Honus Wagner. What's the name of this one? I forget. I know it has Garcia in it after you, which, I mean, that's pretty cool. But what's it referred to as, that card?
I think it's either Roehrig-Garcia or Garcia Roehrig, and that's Craig Roehrig. I don't know if he deals anymore, but he was a big dealer, and he got that card graded, and so it went from wherever he got it from to in his possession, and then to me.
And what is it like for you to know that there's a card out there that's very valuable with your name kind of attached to it?
I probably really haven't thought about it until right now.
Welcome to the world of questions and on podcasts.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it right now. Right, I mean, hopefully it's in someone's possession that really appreciates it. That's what's important.
Yeah, for sure. All right, go to a couple comments for a moment. Give you a break. Anthony George, yes, you are catching this live. 90s Auctions, our friend Josh Adams. 90s Auctions is a new sports card, a very niche auction house, only 90s cards. And Josh is a great guy. He says, Mark is the best, great items, great auction, very knowledgeable. And Josh, if you're still there, thank you for coming by. Mod Cult says, that's the Death Star playset, Jeremy. I had it too and loved it. That's where I was talking about the garbage compactor room where they all get trapped into for a few minutes in the movie. I forget which film it was. Maybe Empire. I don't know. But in any event, Mod Cult. Yes, we were both playing with that back in the 80s for sure. Vintage Card Collector says, is there a market for vintage Sesame Street toys? Which, that's a good question. I mean, every kid in the world watches Sesame Street. You know, a vintage Big Bird or Oscar the Grouch or Cookie Monster. Mark, what do you know about that? And Peter, to you, are you chasing any Sesame Street toys?
You know, I used to watch that as a kid. I didn't even know they existed, but I guarantee if you were to put a few of them in front of me, I'd probably want them. I'm a junkie. So if you were, Mark, if you find a Big Bird or Oscar the Grouch or Bert and Ernie, I would probably want them.
Yeah. You know, I want to bring up something too, Peter. You said a few minutes ago that, you know, kids nowadays aren't playing with the action figures like we did as kids. But my 4-year-old, you know, he's big into superheroes, and he's always asking me, Daddy, which one do you want to be? You know, do I want to be Flash or Superman or Spider-Man or Batman or the Hulk? I mean, he's got them all. Or Captain America. I mean, we're in Canada. His favorite is Captain America. But, you know, and then we'll sit there and I'll hold one in my hand and he holds one in his other hand. And we're playing with them. You know, really, they're just banging into each other and you're saying some words. But, you know, and he's never watched the superhero shows. I don't think he has. He's got books in that. But, you know, to me, it's things like that make me think that this category of collecting is going to be around for a very long time. And with Star Wars kind of leading the way and Disney owning that franchise and that IP and the fact that they're never going to rest it, I don't know if this is going to, if the interest in this category of collectibles will ever end, and they can always revive and redo and do another He-Man, do another G.I. Joe movie, do another, Wonder Woman or Thundercats, Transformers. I mean, these things can go on forever. And I think I think when you combine that with the fact that kids, I think they do like to play with these figures, when they have the opportunity. I just see it in my own house. So I think that's all really good as far as, the future interest and the chase for nostalgia of all these items and all these different lines and categories. So I'll leave it at that and open it up to any response from either of you two.
I'm glad to hear that kids are playing with toys. Usually it's adults buying these toys nowadays at Target as well. That's the first I've heard. Now they want to be on their video games all the time, So that's really cool that you're doing that with your son.
Yeah, if he's watching this in 20 years from now, his name's Mason. Mason, I loved playing every time I played with you with action figures. Of course, I loved doing it. But it's different because he doesn't even know the backstories yet. So once you take a young kid who likes it because he likes how these guys look. So when I take him for his birthday to the toy store, he wants to get the one that looks the coolest and has a cool name. But as he grows up And if he remains interested and actually researches and educates himself on the backstories and watches the movies and maybe read some comic books for whichever line we're talking about, it's just going to become more and more entrenched in him and others like him to maybe pursue these things. Maybe they take their teenage years off, like a lot of people did growing up, like in our generation, and then they'll come back when he's got that discretionary income when he's 25, 35, 40 years old and go after a lot of these things that he's playing with today. But I'll tell you one thing, guys, while every toy I've ever bought him has been opened, I'm not going to let him sell these at a garage sale down the road. We will be keeping all these things in a box because I just know that I think I know that he'll love them, in 30, 40 years. Comments. Mark, anything you want to jump in with?
I mean, as far as these go for as valuable collectibles, I mean, Peter's still a very young man, and there's going to be more guys like Peter, like yourself, Jeremy, that are exposed to this, whether they see the iPhone on TV or read a news article and check that out, and then happen to fall upon the other stuff. And they say, wait, what is this? That's how it happened to me. My brother exposed me to an action figure, and I remembered it, but it got me to look into it. I exposed Peter to it, and he was into Mario at the time. And if I remember correctly, we had a low grade Mario in the first auction, and I think you were a bidder on that, Peter. I don't think you won it, but you may have put in a low bid.
Right.
But you saw that, and you saw all the other stuff in the auction, and I'm sure you saw the other stuff, and it made you look into it a little bit. And it's all about being exposed to it. And you can start off in one path with sports cards, and then you see this other path, and it's pretty cool too.
I just refreshed the main page of the LCG auction, and I noticed that Snake Eyes lot number 1 got another bid. Anything you'd like to, Mark, update us on at all? Is there anything going on? Are we coming up to a tighter extended bidding window yet? Any information on the auction itself?
So in 10 minutes, we could end. Let's see.
And this is the item I was just mentioning, lot number 1, the Snake Eyes explosion back. I just refreshed in the background, and it went from 12,000 something up to 13,310. So we know that there are still bids going on. I want to see what Frogger is at, because I could still potentially place another bid. Still sitting at 759. Oh boy. Go ahead, Mark.
So if there's no bids in the next 10 minutes, the auction's going to end, and there's going to be no lot by lot closing period. In 10 minutes, if one more bid comes in, we're going to get to that lot by lot closing period. So if we get there at 7 p.m. Eastern, each lot will have a 10-minute clock on it. Whenever a bid comes, that clock will reset immediately to another 10 minutes. If there's a bid on another item, that's not going to affect your clock. So what a lot of savvy bidders that have experience are doing is they're waiting for this lot by lot closing period. They're waiting because now they're going to pounce. They've got their list of items. They're going to circle back. When we first started doing this, I noticed immediately our most savvy, experienced bidders had very good strategy, and they pretty much were able to scoop out everything they wanted because they understood the process, really read it through, and had experience with other auction houses like Robert Edwards that has the same closing procedure.
And our friend Josh Adams at 90s Auctions also uses this software, is my understanding.
He uses the software. I don't know if he does 2 different potential closing periods.
So it's somewhat customizable.
Robert Edwards is the only one, to my knowledge, that does that.
Okay. Peter, let's go back to you for a moment. Just want to kind of give you, an open forum. Is there anything else that comes to mind for you when it comes to hold on, let me backtrack. How is your bidding going tonight? Are you feeling like you're going to come away with some of the items that you're looking for? Are you nervous about anything right now? Where are you at mentally as far as tonight's auction goes?
I'd say I'm a little nervous, and I just never know what to expect. I mean, you just never know, and I'm going to do my best. I try to have limits, but it's hard to stick to those limits, especially when you're buying stuff. You're not trying to flip anything. You're buying it for yourself because you remember something that happened to you 35, 40 years ago when you were a kid, and you just want to play, or not play with the toy, but look at the toy again. Like you said, there's that nostalgia there. But I will do my best. And
How many items are you in on right now?
Oh, I've probably placed bids on 30 or 40 items, but there's probably like 10 to 12 items that I will really go after.
So are you one of those savvy bidders that Mark was just referring to, where you're kind of like, you're watching, do you have a window open for each lot right now and you're monitoring them and seeing where they're at and you're going to be ready to go?
I don't have a window open for each one of them. And I guess Mark would have to tell you if I'm savvy or not. He sees more than I can see back there.
I can say that Peter certainly has an eye for quality, and there's certain bidders that I've noticed from the very beginning. Like, I can almost predict the pieces that they're going to bid on because they're high quality pieces, and these are collectors that want super quality in there. And it's not necessarily always based on grade. A lot of it's eye appeal as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to talk about any certain items, but yeah, I definitely notice, and that's the same thing with cards too, Jeremy. Like, when you review a card, when you review that Gretzky OPG, like, I pay attention because you know what you're talking about. You talk about stuff that I wouldn't normally catch. And if the Gretzky that you would probably own would be a really good copy of whatever grade it's in.
It is. In my opinion, at least. I love one of my Gretzky's in particular, for sure. All right.
Well, let's let Peter go. I think we're if no bid comes in 5 minutes, we're not even going to get to the extended, and it's going to end. So, Peter, thank you for coming on. And
thank you. Yeah, I want to ask quickly, Peter, can I ask what state you live in?
I'm in Texas.
You're in Texas, because I'm going to invite myself over to your house. If I'm ever in Texas, I would love to see your collection. I think it would be very inspiring for myself. So perhaps we can.
Whenever you're ready, you let me know. Mark is going to come by at some point too. So you just let me know.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you for joining, Peter. You're the first guest who's ever come on to Sports Cards Live, and that's over 300 people that I did not meet previously. So thank you. It's nice to meet you, and I look forward to meeting you in person sometime.
All right. You'll have a good one. Thanks.
Take care. Take care, Peter. All right. So I'm going to bring Dennis back on in a moment, but before I do, I just want to bring Dexflow's comment here. It says, got to watch the video on demand on this episode. It's Action Figure 101, and we haven't even gotten to it. We're calling like our educational series. We do have a series of specific pieces of information that I think are going to be very interesting. And hopefully we have time to get to them, Mark, because I'd really like to, for my own benefit, and I think for the audiences. I see Dennis is just standing up, so I'm going to go to Foul Fly Ball. Says that Snake Eyes was the only G.I. Joe I owned as a kid. It was my favorite toy, and that's Jeremy. It was good to see you at the Burbank show. Vintage Card Collector says, I'm 45, similar age to Peter. Seems items that were part of the childhood of a 20 to 25-year-old would have a big future when they're 40s with disposable income. I agree with that completely. Dexflow here says, with the new Transformers movie based on Beast Wars, I can see the Beast Wars line of Transformers getting a big bump. That's how it works, right? I'm with you on that, Dex. And Jeremy Collector's Leave says, Peter in the DFW. All right. Hey, nice to know you're still there, Jeremy. All right. Let's bring Dennis back on the screen. What do you think? Mark, should we bring him back?
Yeah, let's bring him back.
Let's bring him back. There he is.
There he is.
And he's back.
So a bid did come in, Jeremy. So we are going to get to that lot by lot extended period in 3 minutes. So it's going to be interesting. In my opinion, we're going to see some really quality pieces get bids now.
Wow. Okay. Well, that should be a lot of fun. And I mean, do you know which items are getting bids, or do I know without, like, is there something to tell me what item got the most recent bid?
Uh-oh, Dennis is his microphone's silent.
That it was. Top right, it says sort by. You can just go by recent bids. You can see what everybody's bidding on, like, as they bid, pretty much. Just refresh every once in a while.
Oh, so if I'm gonna come up here instead of lot number, recent bids, and look at that. Okay, so this is like
this is where I live.
Yeah, this is like the ticker on the top of the PWCC website when I covered their auctions. This is like, okay, great. So now we know, and we're 3 minutes away from what could be some serious action, I guess. Shall we use this time then, fellas, to get into one of our sort of informational pieces, do you think? I've got...
Yeah, let's start with Transformers, Jeremy.
Okay, so so we have right here what to look for in Transformers. That's the first one, and I'm just going to leave it open to you guys with all the knowledge to inform us.
If I could take this one, Dennis, and Jeremy, if you want to just go to a random Transformer, you could do maybe Optimus Prime would be a good one that your viewers will recognize. That should be one at the very top.
The sort by lot again.
If you go to lot number, there it is.
There it is.
So when I first started collecting, I didn't quite know what to look for. If I saw an AFA 80, it was an AFA 80. But the season Transformers and the stuff that you see sell for the highest prices have some very specific attributes. Each side of the Transformers box is secured by tape normally. You see the tape on the side of the box there if you zoom in, Jeremy, right there. So that's very important when it comes to the value. If that was torn off or cut, many big buyers of Transformers would not be interested in the piece. It can significantly hinder the value. Also on the Transformer, if you go to the front panel, coupled with the tape on the sides, if you look at each edge, so just down the edge, if you see this may be a reflection, but if this were to have like a white line, which would be called edge wear, is the term for it. But it would basically indicate that the box had been opened before, and it could have been either retaped or maybe it was opened by the factory. I don't know. But if you see that, it'll also go for a significantly lower price. So you want the edges to be clean, no edge wear. It shows that the box has never been opened, and you want it to be tape sealed on both sides. If you have those attributes, the piece is going to go for a lot more money.
Because whoever's buying it is not going to play with it. These are now display pieces, which is pretty awesome.
I think those are the two things that oftentimes grading doesn't take into account. You can have two AFA 80 pieces, one with tape busted, the other with edge wear, and they're both AFA 80. So as a new collector, you may make the mistake of overpaying, or you may not even, you don't know about this stuff till you get in there. And when you try to sell it, it's way harder to sell. But that's what I see on Transformers.
This art is just amazing too. Like, it's so nice this is the back of the packaging. Thankfully, they made the back of the packaging nice. I mean, the back is nicer than the front. The front's fine, of course, but the back is just beautiful. Like, look at that action scene. It's amazing.
Yeah, and when you find one, you can kind of see an outline right there horizontally.
Mhm.
The vast majority of Transformers, not necessarily in LCG because we source the most quality pieces, but typically there would be a profound flap crease, a horizontal flap crease right there, where this one you can kind of see an outline, but normally it's been completely folded over and back. And collectors really covet the pieces without the flap crease. Even though it's the back of it and you can't see it when it's displayed from the front, a piece without a flap crease is highly desirable.
Yeah. I love the similarities with sports cards. It helps to frame it a little bit. Like you say, edge wear. I get that. A crease. I get that. That makes sense. Does that cover what you'd like to cover in terms of what to look for in Transformers?
Yeah, in Transformers, I think that's
Rub or pre-rub too.
Rub and pre-rub. That denotes like Series 1. The earlier ones are called pre-rub. The later ones have an additional sticker on them, Jeremy, where you could like put your finger on it and the heat would indicate whether it was a Autobot or a Decepticon. So the pieces that have that sticker are basically the second release, like the Prowl that one of your viewers asked about. That's a pre-rub. That's a first release. It doesn't have the sticker on it. The one we sold previously that went for a lot of money, that did have the rub sign sticker. The pre-rub is harder to find. It's more valuable, but both are very desirable and hard to find, quite frankly.
Very interesting. CC had this question here. What does the platinum banner on some of the lots signify?
That it's a special piece. Sometimes it indicates value. It's basically a highlight list from the auction. We start them typically at 2,500 up to 10,000. The Snake Eye start at 10. So they're typically higher priced items, but they're also like highlights, like the Hulk Hogan, the Boba Fett Canadian release, the Dragonfly, which in AFA 85, that's like a once in a decade piece. I mean, you're just not going to find it.
Where's the Dragonfly?
The Dragonfly is a little bit lower. It's the helicopter, the G.I. Joe helicopter. Now we've seen these in like AFA 75, but in 85, that's a piece that's going to go into a collection that it's probably not going to come out anytime soon.
So cool. So cool. JP says, Mark, do you feel that the last discussion you had with Jeremy had in any way caused a noticeable bump to that specific item Jeremy liked? Which item was it?
I think he's talking about the Luke Skywalker.
The loose Luke.
No. The Luke Skywalker 35 millimeter.
Oh, the slot. Oh, sorry. The negative.
I'd have to look at who the bidders are. I know somebody in the lead was one of our regulars. But it takes at least two, right? So maybe somebody from Jeremy's audience was turned on. I still think that piece is ridiculously low compared to, when we buy stuff for investment purposes, we look at kind of the upside versus, the downside risk and what the potential of an item is. I think at this price, this one's still a very good buy.
I do too. Without knowing much, I'm surprised. It's about a tenth of the price that I think it could or should be based on just what it is. But I'm kind of grabbing that out of thin air. I don't have anything to base it on except for my gut, which could be completely wrong. Junk Wax Museum here says pre-rub, interesting. I mean, yeah, this is what we're trying to do is kind of shed some light on some of the various details that action figure and toy collectors look for, and some of the vernacular as well. Like in sports cards, we have all of our terminology. I'm excited to learn learn the same sort of or the similar terminology that applies to action figure and toy collecting and that sort of thing. All right, well let's talk about another category if we can. Is there one that you chose Transformers first, Mark? Where would you like to go next?
Let's have Dennis talk about Ninja Turtles.
Sweet. Sounds like a plan.
All right,
why don't we look at lot number 66?
One thing I want to clarify, Jeremy, I was mistaken. If an item has 0 bids, going into extended or during extended, you cannot bid on that item. So it does go unsold, I guess. This was clarified to me, and I just wanted to correct that mistake.
Thank you for the clarification. Good
Sorry,
stuff.
65.
65, no problem. We'll just go previous here. And here's lot number 65, Leonardo, 10-back AFA 80, fan club flyer, soft head. All right, Dennis, school us.
Awesome. So whenever it comes to turtles, actually a lot of toy lines, the things you really want to collect are the firsts and the lasts. It seems to be a pattern with a lot of toy lines that they're the most collectible. When it comes to the first, it's because of that nostalgia factor. You see it, you know it, you want it. It's what you saw when you were a kid, when you first saw your first turtle. Like for me, it was a Raphael 10-back. I remember buying it. It had a fan club flyer. And I was 6 years old in Hawaii. Well, the things you look for on 10-backs to find out like the earliest version and the earliest release of 10-backs are what we call the fan club flyer. If you look at this guy here, if you look behind the weapons rack, you'll see a little white piece of paper. And that white piece of paper was a little flyer that you filled out and you sent it in. And after you sent it in, they'd send you in the mail your own turtle membership package. And these were the first release. So if you have a fan club flyer with a soft head is like literally they made some of the heads that were squishy and some of the heads that were hard as a rock. The first releases were squishy. So you want to have a soft head fan club flyer. This is kind of fire. This is where you should be buying turtles if you're buying turtles and wanting to get into them. They almost always demand a premium. They especially in high grade, they're not impossible to find, but they're not cheap when you find them in high grade. This is a very good example, obviously, with an AFA 80 fan club flyer. Leonardo. There are variants from the 10-backs, and I'm not going to get into all that, but there are specific ones that are worth even more. But this is kind of what you look for. It's a really good opening piece, I would say. And one that opening and you can hold in value is going to maintain kind of a thing.
I have a question for you, Dennis, if I may. Yeah. These cards, these are referred to as the card. Clip it, and it says right there, clip and collect right along the top.
Right.
Are these cards ever cut out and submitted to grading companies for grading, whether it's sports card grading companies? And is there a market for the card themselves?
Really, the card itself doesn't have as much value as the card with the figure. Like I have an example of one here where somebody, I'm going to be grading this for somebody. They really wanted it to have the card with it. So like they sent it in with the figure to be graded. They asked me to help them with it kind of a thing. So they want it to be displayed with the card. I personally like it with the card. And I think it looks really nice. It looks sharp with the figure, loose. For sure. I think it's a really big plus.
But just to actually take a guillotine cutter and to cut out, like even my busted up these packages here now, they have these cards at the top that have should I like, and I might, but I'll ask, should you, not that you'll tell me how to collect, but should I cut this out and preserve this Greedo card? It's still a pretty cool piece, just the card itself.
I mean, it's a collector thing for you, right? I mean, there's nothing stopping you from doing it. It has sentimental value, maybe more than real value, but it doesn't hold a lot of value like that particular one. The figure I just showed is like a $300 card back, just the file card, because it's so rare with the figure.
Okay.
Yeah, so it depends on the figure. If you go left on your lots, you're going to hit a very a very cool piece. This is again one of the lasts. So this is a undercover turtle. Undercover turtles are really big buyers items. Like definitely jump in if you can. Undercovers are with the soft good capes. If you look, his cape is made of cloth instead of being hard plastic. There are 2 variants of Don specifically that he has a hard cape and a soft cape. So the soft goods capes are the ones that hold value. They hold a lot of value, and they will continue to hold value. They're actually worth almost as much loose as they are mint on card. It's kind of crazy. It's because there were so many little bitty weapons with them and they got lost. So it's very hard to find them mint on card. Very difficult. I mean, sorry, loose, complete. So when you do have them loose, complete, they have a lot of value with them. But yeah, this piece here is a very nice example of it's about a 70 grade. It isn't graded, but it's probably a 70 grade once graded 75. But it's an undercover turtle. So there's 4 undercover turtles, obviously, and there's 2 different variants for weapons. So there's 6 total undercover turtles. They have a lot of value. So these are kind of the 2 big areas I would recommend. And then obviously the one we mentioned earlier, Scratch. Scratch is a beast mode Grail type figure. I would compare him, if you're in a Star Wars guy, to a vinyl cape Jawa.
So we know that because this is not graded, Peter Garcia is not bidding on this item. He's 100% graded. What do you want to say to, and this maybe is for Mark, you know, what, it says the slot is closed. So we're now in the
past 10 minutes on it.
All right. So this lot is done. What do you want to, we had Peter come on and say, I only buy graded, you know, LCG is selling a non-graded piece. Get me comfortable, Mark, if you can, on buying an ungraded piece from LCG.
Well, if you buy it from LCG, it's going to be guaranteed in terms of authenticity. We also have, you know, the photos that you can zoom in and really see the condition and judge for yourself. We also have very reasonable opening bids to where, you know, it's going to be probably something comfortable that you're going to open the item with. The stuff to be careful about from an authenticity standpoint is like we see some of these GI Joes on eBay and you don't know who the seller is. There's no kind of guarantee behind it. And we see that I've seen these, they're called recarded figures, recarded, and they look pristine and amazing. And it's a replica, like it's a remade card. And you really can't tell the difference until you get it in hand. And that's kind of scary from a buyer's perspective. So, you know, anytime you're looking to buy a high-end item, typically stick to graded items. If you're buying it from a marketplace like eBay or something, a private transaction, there's a lot of risk you take with buying ungraded if you don't have a lot of experience.
All right. Well, great answer, man. That's all I can say to that. Thank you for
excellent advice.
And I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak to that because it's important that and you know, it's funny. Well, not funny, but Peter made the comment that, you know, when he met Mark's professional LCGs, you know, does a great job and they have integrity. And when Mark and I first started talking about doing a show together, well, I mean, you got to, you know, I want to know that I can align my brand with yours and be comfortable that you know, that it's a good alignment. And, you know, we met a couple times and I got there. So I'm not surprised. And that's why I'm always going to give Mark the opportunity to address some of these things that might be of concern for some people. And so I'm glad we got to do that. Okay. What to look for would you like to go to next?
We can do Motu, Masters of the Universe. That'll be pretty quick. When I first started buying Masters of the Universe, I was just looking for high grade. I didn't know there was a distinction between a clear bubble and a yellow bubble. In fact, I thought they were all yellow bubbles because I got on eBay and that was all I saw. So it took me a couple of months to find some really kind of quality collectors with quality collections that had these clear bubbles. And when you compare them side by side, the difference is stark. And personally, like everybody collects different, right? But the type of material that you'll see in LCG typically is stuff that you won't see elsewhere. So whether it's the Prince Adam or the Fisto next to it, 1 out of 25 of those is going to have clarity to it. And even less is it going to be a clear bubble plus a nice card. So the condition, but a collector like myself, I prefer clear bubble and a lesser card rather than yellow bubble and mint condition card. It's just that the yellow bubble is so common and so pervasive that when you see a clear bubble, it almost glows. And that's specific with Masters of the Universe, because the first 3 series in Masters of the Universe tend to turn really yellow. So when you see a He-Man like we have, or a Skeletor or a Prince Adam that's clear, I mean, those pieces glow, Jeremy, when you have experience with them.
That's really cool. Anything else about Masters of the Universe and He-Man collecting that sticks out to you as worthy to share with us?
There's very few of them. I think like with the clear Skeletor, there's only like, I'm pretty sure it's in the description. There's less than 10, I believe, of that release that are clear and graded. That's how few there are.
According to the latest pop data published on AFA website early 2022, there were only 10 early release clear bubble Skeletors across all grades, and only 2 are graded higher than our offering. So you're getting a top 3 example right here. This sold for just under $12,000. When I compare this to the price of sports cards, a top 3 piece of a real iconic figure like Skeletor. I wasn't a He-Man guy, but I always knew about Skeletor. He scared me, but I always knew. That seems to me like a very fair price, considering what other collectibles go for. So cool. Okay, let's go on. We had a few of these that we wanted to get to. We still have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Star Wars, VHS, G.I. Joe. Anyone you'd like to hit on first with some tips and tricks of the trade?
Dennis can tackle Star Wars.
Yeah, definitely. Let's look real quick at where did it go? I had some queued up in my head, and now I clicked away for a second. I apologize, guys.
No worries.
Let's go to lot 100.
Lot 100, Han Solo. Let's open this up. I love this figure. I love the art on these. I wish I had 20 or 30K to dump into these figures today, but go ahead, Dennis, please have at her. $1.99. $1.99.
Crazy, right? When it comes to Star Wars, it's kind of the same thing with the first and the last, like Turtles. A lot of people collect the first 12 or the first 21 usually is a pretty good starting point. And a lot of guys collect the last 17, they're called. And that's where like the most value really is in Star Wars. There's some, oddballs here and there. When it comes to 12 backs, you have what's called an A, B, and a C back. There's actually a D and an E, but that's told in Beast. But if you look at the card back art, yeah, if you look where the lightsaber is being pulled out by a little kid with his hand, if you look at that blurb right there, it's kind of large. It's got a lot of text in it. Whenever they made the first lightsabers, they were dual telescoping. So the lightsabers actually had an extended piece that came out on the inside. So that was on the card back. In the top picture, you can see that it's a real tiny sticking out a little bit. On the bottom picture, it's extended like those two Luke Skywalker arms. If we go to a B back, which if you go to lot number 102, okay, so this is a B back. Look at that same area. The lightsaber top picture is a little bit longer, just barely, but you can see where like a little bit of yellow added on. You can actually see it pretty visibly, with still a pretty big blurb of text. And if you look at a C back, which I don't know if we had a C back in the auction, I think we did for Han. So 106. And if you look at a C back, it's really easy to tell because the little blurb of text is teeny tiny. It's only 3 lines versus like 5 lines. So those are the 3 big distinctions for 12-backs.
That's it. That's it. That's
it.
the difference. Dennis? Is that the only difference between A, B, and C? Is the little lightsaber pictures here?
So the verbiage itself too changed a little bit, and also on the bottom half, there's some words that change a little bit when it comes to the redemption of the pops for the collector stand. But I mean, it's the easiest way is to look at the lightsabers. Like, you don't have to remember words and all that. You just know the lightsabers real quick. It's real fast. A lot of people get hung up on the verbiage here, but in the end, if you just know where to look here, you're golden. You can find them really fast. A-backs are a little bit more desirable than B-backs, and B-backs a little bit more desirable probably than C-backs. There are a few exceptions. If you look at this Han, it went for a ton of money, and that's because they changed Han's sculpt in the middle of the B to C transition. And this is actually the small head Han, which is the one that I personally prefer. The big head Han started showing up on the C-back, so it's a little bit less common to see a small head Han on a C-back. I think that's why this one went for a pretty penny. And I'm actually very happy to see that it beat the A. I love that, actually, in a way. It's funny because it is cool that it's because of the variant itself that pushed the price up, in my opinion, being a small head.
And we're learning, everybody, and we are learning. Anything else to look for in Star Wars figure collecting? Go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say, when it comes to the 12-backs, unfortunately, there's like a ton of variations. You can really get into the weeds with it if you want. I'm pretty crazy about my R2-D2 specifically run. I've got, I think, 14 12-backs from all around the world, different variations, different, even just small variants. I have them. I've been looking for them for a long time, kind of a thing. So you can get a little lost in it if you let yourself. I wouldn't advise starting off there, obviously, but it's a lot of fun. If you're going to choose a rabbit hole, Star Wars 12-backs alone can be a pretty cool rabbit hole. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Dennis, for the Star Wars tutorial.
Definitely.
All right, guys. We have now. I'm gonna call out the next one if that's okay, Mark. I'd like to learn a little bit about the VHS collecting, because it's an area of the auction, of the LCG auction, this version that caught my eye, especially because of the titles. So what can we talk, and let's be clear, like VHS collecting in the sports card communities, the narratives that were coming out were that, now we're grading VHS. What is it about VHS that makes it more collectible than, say, Betamax or DVDs or Blu-rays? What is it about them that make these particular VHS tapes more collectible than other forms of movies?
I think it just appeals to people of a certain age. Like either myself or you, Jeremy, or Dennis. We remember that's how we watched that's how I watched Star Wars originally. I'm a little younger, but I watched it on VHS, and watched all of my movies on VHS until around 2001-ish, when DVD players became a thing. But yeah, this was huge. Everybody like kind of fondly remembers videotape stores. I mean, they were everywhere. And, I remember walking in when Home Alone first came out, and they had like 20 copies on the wall, and, all of them were gone because they were all rented. But I remember them fondly. A lot of other people do. They weren't collectible for the most part until about 2 years ago or so. And it really caught on. I think they're similar to video games in their collectivity. How they're displayed, the size of them, the shrink wrap around them, all of that has some parallels to the video games. And I think a lot of video game collectors kind of looked at it and were thinking, oh, well, this may be the next big thing. And we're kind of seeing how it's gone so far. There's been some big sales in the past 3 days. There was a Superman that I believe went for $40,000 or $50,000 in the Heritage auction, signature auction. A very rare early release from '82, I believe. So there are people collecting these. It doesn't have, in my opinion, as strong of a foundation, but that may be in part because it hasn't been around as a high dollar collectible as long. So we're in the beginning of this. We're seeing a lot of different grading companies take a stab at it. I would say if you're interested, find a title that you like that's affordable. Don't do anything that you're uncomfortable doing. Even though I'm a seller of this stuff, like I don't want people to buy it and then resell it right away and get like that's not going to be a good put you in a good place. Anytime you do that, you're likely to lose money and be turned off from the whole thing. If you get in it, do your research, look at the different sales prices, buy what you can afford. And there's all kind of nuance to this, all kind of nuance. Like a lot of the stuff that we have in this are very rare. So if you go on eBay, you're probably going to see 100 ETs. This one is special because it's an early release Pepsi promo release. It's got a Pepsi sticker on the back, which differentiates it from, the more common release. And it's very rare. I think Heritage just sold this one for either 1,300 or 1,600 on Friday. So somebody got a deal right here for under 700.
Very nice. So, one of the things, if I may, something that I think about is, we as collectors, we want to collect everything something to represent all of our interests. And if you're interested in movies, what is there to collect? Well, there's movie props, but those are one of a kind items, often very expensive. There's not a lot of movie cards, so you can collect the movies themselves. And this is a way of doing that. And then, so to me, the tapes, the VHS tapes like this are like the cards in the sports card hobby. And then the props are like the game used items from so they're kind of, that's how I'm always looking for parallels, Mark, between cards and whatever else it is I'm looking at or talking about. And I see that as a parallel. But these weren't issued in packages and printed they were printed by the millions, I'm sure, but they were opened, and most of them went to Blockbuster Videos and those kind of places, and were open and played with over and over again, the tapes themselves. Is the tape inside the box of any value, or is all the value associated with the what do you call it, the sleeve, or just the cardboard holder?
The focus is on the outside. Typically, the only time the focus would be on the tape itself is if there's something unique about the tape, or there's something wrong with the tape. So if I don't know what could go wrong, but if something went wrong with it, that would be an issue. But some of them, like the Star Wars Return of the Jedi we had, that tape is special because I think it has a gray color. If you go to the bottom of it, it's got a rare kind of, there it is. Yeah, so that makes it unique. A lot of collectors look for that type of stuff to differentiate it from a more common version. In fact, Jeremy, when we were the first to sell, I told you on Friday, we were the first to sell the graded VHS by VGA, and we had 15. It was the first 15 to sell. We had a Return of the Jedi, and it sold for around $15,000. And it also had I think it had the gray. It was one of the early versions, and it had some things that differentiated it, and that's why it went for so much money. So there's a lot to learn. There's a big time learning curve involved with VHS. But if you dive in, it can be pretty fun.
Well, I think they make nice display pieces too, just like a video game does. Collecting video games is all about the display, remembering what those boxes looked like when you were driving home in the backseat of your mother's station wagon and you had your new Atari 2600 or NES game. And I remember just studying the boxes, looking at the back and every picture. And then, you'd get home, you'd open up the instruction manual, look at that, try to get some tips. and then you'd play them and you'd throw out that box because now you had the game, what you were really after. And, you know, the movie is similar to me. Like you said, I think it's a similar collectible, but it's about the display ability. That's what these collectibles are all about for me. Because with sports cards, yeah, I want to display them, but I also recognize that I could do damage to them if I display them. Perhaps you could do damage to these as well, just sunlight and that sort of thing. So I guess there's some caution there. But for me, yeah, I mean, if I were to buy one of these for a couple, like $2,000, I'm like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that sold for $2,000 here, I'd probably be more careful with it. But if I bought something for a couple $100, it's going up on that shelf behind me. And if it deteriorates over time, so be it. You know, I'm probably okay with it. We have two questions regarding VHS. The first one, CC asks, Betamax versus VHS. I think we kind of touched on that it really comes down to the collector, and Betamax seems to have, although it was a Sony product, got dwarfed as soon as VHS came out. And I'd like to see the toys that made us episode, or the electronics that made us episode on that, the war between VHS and Betamax. Do you have any information on that, Mark?
The beta are a little bit smaller, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be slightly less collectible. There's about a 25% difference, I believe, in everything else equal. If you know, an Indiana Jones beta versus an Indiana Jones VHS, there'd probably be about a 25% difference in price.
Good. And Hockey Barn has a question. How can you determine a first release VHS of a hit movie to one released 3 to 5 years later if the sleeves are the same?
Great question. So we have an example of this. If you scroll up, I believe we have a Back to the Future. Actually, it's all the way up in the platinum lots.
Got it.
There it is, right there. So this is a very early version. If you go on eBay, you'll see a ton of these. So why is this one, $6,000 or whatever it ended at? This one's unique because it has the front MCA watermarks and on the back. See how they're across the front? If you go on eBay, you're almost certainly not going to find that. And if you do find it, it's going to be at a very ridiculous price. Also, on the bottom of this tape, I think there's a certain indicator. There's like a stamp or something on the tape itself, I believe.
MCA TV right here.
Right. Yeah. So that's one of the other distinguishing factors. So there's all these little nuanced things that, there is a learning curve in our description. We noted them in the lot description. There's certain highlights that we noted, and you have to have experience when you dive into this. But if you're not looking to spend a ton of money, the alternative is to buy one of the more common versions that look almost identical. But the more advanced collector will look for something like this.
Oh, look at that budget and revenue rewind put on their grading slab. The budget for the movie and the revenue. That's really cool information to have there. A couple trivia facts. I'm just seeing this for the first time. I love it. That's so cool. Runtime. Oh, wow. That's very neat. Really neat stuff. Let's have a look at the rest of this. So you got the box, the tape itself, the seal. So some information on those three features. The box year, the box type. It's called the slip sleeve. I need to know that terminology. Slip sleeve. That's what we call these the sleeves, the boxes that they're in. All right, great. And this lot has closed, so it's done at about $7,000 with buyer's premium. Well, thanks, Hockey Barn, for that question. Okay, and back to pre-rub. Dexflow put this up a little while ago. Jeremy, think of pre-rub Transformers, similar to 99 Pokemon with a first stamp on it, more desirable. Yeah, makes sense. Thanks. Thank you, Dex. Appreciate that. All right, anything else about VHS, Mark?
Big learning curve. Once you dive in, it's pretty fun. I have significantly overpaid for my WWF big box VHS tapes and my WrestleMania 4 double tape, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. So I like it. And I've overpaid knowingly. But it's kind of it's a fun thing that, more and more people look like they're getting into it. Like more and more collectors, I think, are getting into it, Jeremy, which can be exciting.
It's awesome. So I'm just looking through here. It seems to me like there's only 4 lots that are still open. Would that be right? These 4 here have had bids. Everything else after it is sold.
That's correct.
So so I think if you go to closing soon, right, Dennis?
You just go to recent bids. It'll show the at the top the last ones that are opening and that are still open.
Yeah.
So just sure enough, all high quality pieces.
Yeah, all the pieces we expected
to go into the latest to take the longest to finish. Yeah, everything else has been sold. So the LCG Winter Premiere auction is down to 4 items that are still open for bid, and they are these ones right up at the top here. So we've got the Masters of the Universe Roboto, which again, I don't know Roboto, but I'd like to meet him. We've got another Masters of the Universe, the Battle Ram 8-back. Let me see this piece. I just want to see what this thing looks like.
Jeremy, that's probably the best example in the hobby. I don't think there's a better one. This was graded AFA 85. It should be graded AFA 100. It's absolutely pristine.
Look at the back. You can see the Castle Grayskull there. On the Toys That Made Us, there's an episode on Masters of the Universe, and there's a lot of talk about the Castle Grayskull, how important that was to the whole franchise of toys for Masters of the Universe. What I also found very interesting was that Masters of the Universe was created to be a toy. It wasn't a story that then had toys made. It was toys that then there had to be a story for it. And boy, was that an eye-opening sort of a detail for me, at least. I thought that was really neat. I loved hearing that. JP wants to know, is there a market for used, not sealed VHS at this time?
I mean, they're very, very difficult to sell unless you have something just super rare. There's just so much of it. It's not a comparable market to the sealed market.
Makes sense to me. Collectors League, Jeremy says, love all the Masters of the Universe. Yeah, it looks so cool. I wasn't into it when I was younger. I think I said on Friday, I wish I was, though, because, and maybe it's saving me money today, but or just another rabbit hole I don't need to go down. And Mod Cult says, it makes me feel a lot better knowing Mark isn't regretful for having overpaid for things he likes. It's inspiring for me as I have overpaid for some of my collectibles too, and now feel better about it. It's one of those misery likes company sort of things, right? Except that we're not miserable, because that's what it comes down to for these types of collectibles. You need to spend what you're comfortable spend. And this goes for everything, I think. If the value goes down to 0, you want to still like what you have. And I mean, I don't think the value is going to go down to 0 on any of these collectibles, unless the world goes totally upside down. But at the end of the day, you want to enjoy what you're buying and surrounding it, just like Dennis is in his room right there. He's surrounding himself by the things that he loves. And that's, if you amortize the value, Dennis, of everything in your room down to the day, let's say you spent $3,650 on something and you have it hanging for 10 years. That's $1 a day to enjoy it.
Right.
I mean, that's how I look at something. That might be the accountant in me looking to amortize. But, if you look at it that way, after that 10 years is, okay, I've now expensed my whole cost of the item. I'm now into it for 0. So all is good if I can't get anything for it at the end of the day.
It's a good way of looking at it, for sure.
Mod Cult says, thank you for having such a positive attitude. That's a nice comment, Mod. Appreciate that. I think it was more for Mark, but appreciate that on behalf of Mark. Okay, so do you want to talk about what to look for? And now, first of all, we're going to have to wind this down pretty soon, I would think, because what is left now? Let's just see if any of those 4 have finished. Those 4 items are all still open, so I guess we're going to wait for a window. Mark, would you like to touch on TMNT, G.I. Joe?
We hit
Wonder
on Turtles
He-Man.
already.
We can do G.I. Joe.
All right. So let me bring up our little banner there. Let me scroll down to some G.I. Joe figures. Let me know if I go. There's a couple right there. There's more. Is there more down below?
There's a Joe section.
There's a Joe section. So let's
You
go
click
down
on
to
the
the
drop down
Joe
menu and just
section.
click Joe's.
Here's some Joes. Here we have Snake Eye, Stalker.
We can't see your screen though, Jeremy.
Oh, that's why. Sorry, guys. Thank you. I do that sometimes.
That's
Let me
okay.
go back to lot. And I was also sorted the wrong way. Let me sort by lot number. And now let's go to G.I. Joe's.
So when I first got into the hobby for this type of stuff, the very first piece I purchased was a G.I. Joe that I remembered as a kid, the Snake Eyes with Timber. And I wanted to get it. And I figured out AFA was grading. I didn't really know what it was, but that's the piece I want to get. Just maybe 3 quality pieces, like a Snake Eyes, a Cobra Commander, and a Destro. Those are 3 just key pieces that are representative of the line. But I didn't really know what I was looking at. So I didn't know what to look for, didn't know if I was overpaying or not. But there are some tells. So if you scroll up, Jeremy, and I think the best thing we can do is go to the side-by-side Snake Eyes, because they're 2 identical characters, but they're on different cards. And there's some subtle differences. I think Jeremy can point out the first one that's most apparent. So
I can.
So what is it, Jeremy? What have you learned?
Well, here we have the flat G.I. Joe here, where the words G.I. the lettering G.I. Joe and the star here, it's just flat on the card as far as how the design of the letters, whereas the other one, listen to me, I'm such a pro now, is the letters and the star are all 3D. I prefer the 3D. I think it adds more depth and more it just makes the card more interesting. But I'm going to stop there and turn it over to the real expert.
So the 3D would probably be more visually appealing, and it came out later. So they revamped it and did a 3D logo, but that would be the second release of the Snake Eyes. So the 3D came later. The flat logo came first. The first is more valuable. Generally speaking, everything the same. So if they're both AFA 85, same subgrades, the earlier release, the flat logo will be more valuable. Also on the back of the card, something to see is the one with the flat logo has a peach file card on the bottom half. So you see Snake Eyes, it has we call this a file card. It's in peach in color. The one with the 3D logo will have a gray file card.
Yeah.
So there's certain characters, Snake Eyes, Shipwreck, Storm Shadow, that are released on both the earlier card and the later card. So that's something to really pay attention to when you're purchasing these. Both are desirable, by the way.
I've messed up back here because I only collected peach was my goal. And I ended up buying a couple of gray cards over the years. I had to sell them, I had to get peach by just not knowing at the time that there was a difference.
I must say the peach is nicer to me just because it's brighter. The gray is a little bit darker, but the gray has the 3D and the peach doesn't. So I'd have to pick my poison there. Which one do I prefer? And I got to tell you, both the front and the back of these cards are very interesting to me versus Transformers, where I really like the back. So really interesting. I don't know which way I would go, but G.I. Joe was another one that I might have had a couple as a kid, but I certainly wasn't a fanatic about it. So I'm not going to get into G.I. Joes myself, but if I were, I don't know which way I would go.
I think you would go with the earlier version, the more expensive version.
I probably, yeah, maybe.
I mean, what I, everybody collects different. What I wanted was a really high quality early example is what I wanted. when I got into it. And I wanted just 3 characters, and 3 characters turned into 5 characters, and then it became Transformers, and then it became Masters of the Universe, and then it, now we're doing this.
Yeah, and I'm just going back and forth looking at different parts of the card to see what the differences are. The bottom left corner, there's a difference as well. Triple win instantly here versus this one's got with swivel arm battle grip. I like that. I prefer the what with like this with text about the figure itself on the newer one versus the win something.
Yeah, and not every one of the flat logo cards have that triple win offer. Some of them do, and there's some people that collect only triple win cards.
That's my whole second row is all triple wins.
So Dennis has that. So it's interesting how people look for different variants, and they stick to those and they go after them. But yeah, there are some differences. Generally, the high end collectors want the earlier release.
Got it. Okay. And is that kind of, well, actually, let's have a look at the back of the card again, not for the differences, but just for the back of the card. Like as a kid, if you got your first G.I. Joe figure and you're in the back of your mother's station wagon looking at your new toy that you're going to open up when you get home, like this is such a great sales tactic for, who is this, Kenner, or who made these? Hasbro. What a great sales tactic to put all the other ones that you might want on the back. And you talk about like 12 back, 21 backs, all these different ones. I mean, this is what, 8 times 48. This is a 50 back.
It's a 32 and a 34, I think, actually.
2, 4. Oh, yeah. Sorry, 32. Yeah, 35. I miscounted. 34 back. Like that's 34 opportunities for Hasbro to sell this kid another figure. Like you just pick the ones you want the most, and then you go for them. Wow.
Every figure has 2 names too, technically. Like this one, Snake Eyes is also known as Commando. Every figure kind of has 2 different names. They did all kinds of really cool things. There's a code name and then their real name or their designation, I guess. It's little things that are fun.
Well, let's just have a look at one more of these then, because I want to see another example of the dual name here. So this is Sergeant, First Sergeant, also known as Duke. Yeah, that's so here we go. You have, oh no, so the back picture only have like the code name or the actual name. Yeah,
I like to read the stories as a kid too, and I would literally play that stuff out, like not even playing.
Like these stories here. Yeah. So cool. So cool. Couple comments here, guys. Is that it for G.I. Joe then, Mark, before we
Yeah, I think that's good. There's also, like there's a maybe, okay, go down a little bit. Or no, it's up. Sorry. It's right next to the Snake Eyes. Duke 141. So you were counting the number of characters on the back. This one has 32 characters on the back. There's also the same exact character, Duke, with 34 characters on the back of his card. So the more advanced collector will generally go for the one with 32 characters on the back because it's an earlier release. So it's not just looking at the flat logo and the peach card. It's also turning it over on the back, counting how many characters, and if it's the earliest or it's the lowest number of characters on the back, that denotes a first release.
Got it. Makes sense, because they added more as time went by, I guess.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, good stuff. So that's our G.I. Joe things to know. Couple quick comments here. Vintage Card Collector says, do you think your site will enter other markets such as vintage movie posters?
I think so, for posters specifically. I mean, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we don't put in another category without really kind of having a good plan. I spoke about this on Friday, Jeremy, where if we do posters or whatever it is, we're going to try to do it right to where we have our marketing in place. We have a good selection. We're not going to go at it haphazardly where, you know, we put something out there. It's not impressive. It
We
doesn't.
wouldn't put one. We wouldn't put just one, like for sure.
Right. I mean, if we get into a category, we're going to try to do it as best we can. So the short of it is that we're certainly open to it. But if we do get into it, we'll have a plan in place.
Masked Men memorabilia, say Vintage Toys 101. Love it. Glad you do, Masked Men. Thank you for being here. Alrighty. We can now go talk about, you want to talk about the Wonder Bread He-Man? I don't know that it's sold tonight.
Yeah, that one surprised me because it's got such a story behind it.
Let me see where that falls. It's coming up, is it not?
He's a platinum at the top. One of the.
This guy right here. So you want to tell a story about this figure here?
Do you know the story, Dennis?
So the story, I think, behind it was the fact that there's actually a really big discussion around this. Was Wonder Bread He-Man even a thing? There's so much back and forth on it. It's really funny. I've seen it over the years, but there's, to be honest, I forget whether you would like get Wonder Bread tags and send them in to get the figure or whatever. But this is a variant. It's a very specific variant that is different from the traditional He-Man, and he was only offered as a mail away. He wasn't meant on card. He has some very distinct features that make him different than a regular He-Man. Number one is, his hair is a brown color. It's not the yellow color that He-Man has. Number two, his belt is black, and his whatever it's called, the underwear, whatever. My mind is blank right now, but it's the darker brown than the brown that was on He-Man. He also had different weapons, so he was like definitely a variant that was a mail away. It was harder to get, and they don't pop up often. Often found loose and in really bad condition. Whereas this one was actually a very nice example from others that I've seen. Also, his boots, right, Mark, were black.
So some key differences from the typical standard He-Man, but particularly the hair color, and just he's way more buff in the figure mold itself. It seems like.
I think he's actually the same buffness. Something about his belly button is different too, or something. Honestly,
the other one you see, Jeremy, has the body armor on it, so it covers him up a little bit.
Right, he's pretty naked here.
Yeah, he's naked for sure.
So the original rumor was that this was part of a Wonder Bread giveaway, where you send in, proof of purchase or whatever, and you get a He-Man action figure in exchange through the mail. And that was the long-standing rumor on the internet from, I believe it originated in the 90s. So people were collecting these a long time ago. There's a lot of counterfeits, a lot of fake Wonder Bread. So if you buy one, make sure you buy a graded and authenticated one. If the price is too good to be true, it usually is. But there's been some things that have come out recently about this that have shed some light on the kind of the backstory of it. Somebody was going through the Mattel archives, and it's in our lot description where there's like a chain of letters points to the figure originating from a 1983 buy one get one free mail away campaign. So this wasn't necessarily a Wonder Bread campaign. It was like a more general Masters of the Universe campaign. I think like in magazines, you'd see it on a magazine page. So it's now thought that that's where it originated. And instead of sending the traditional He-Man, they sent this special edition He-Man, Well, the special edition He-Man wasn't well received. They were getting letters saying, wait, my son wants the He-Man he's used to. And so they were getting these, Mattel was getting these letters, and they opted to cease production and stop mailing them out. And so that's now the latest theory behind it.
Got it. All
I
right.
think it's still kind of technically unknown for sure. That's the funny thing about it is,
yeah, there's some mystery to it.
yeah, I've always heard the Wonder Bread part. I hadn't even heard this. I hadn't even looked at the lot close enough to know that that other story. But it honestly, that's more plausible because there's been no proof of the Wonder Bread at all.
Well, they actually found a letter to Mattel, and then found a Mattel letter in response to the woman that wrote.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
there's several videos on YouTube detailing the story. And I don't know if we included a link on there or not. I'm not sure we did, but we probably should have.
Yeah, I don't see one here.
We just kind of told the story, but there's video that you could watch that makes it kind of even more appealing.
Very cool. And so will that, because it didn't sell tonight, will that carry over to the next auction, do you think?
We'll have to make a decision on that. We'll talk to the consignor and kind of see where they're at and, make a decision. It didn't go for what we thought was a reasonable opening bid. So we'll see.
Okay. So looking at the items that sold from highest price, the iPhone #1, the Boba Fett #2 at 18.5. We got the Bumblebee Transformer 15.3, Snake Eyes 13.3. There's still three lots that are still running, but it's fun to look and see like what were the most expensive items. And I guess Peter Garcia is probably I wonder which ones he ended up winning, and congratulations to him. I hope he got the ones that he was after. I gotta think he probably got a few of them. I would expect. JP here says this hobby appears to be similar to vintage. Everything has been produced. What is feeding new hobbyists looking to enter? I know that I spend a lot of time at Toys R Us nowadays with my kids, and there are tons of action figures in there. So there's that. I think that's a big part of it myself. He asks, is it simply buying lower quality items and trading up, or are there new stock options? So I just spoke to the new stock options. I definitely see those, if that is what you're talking about, JP. But do you guys want to maybe speak to like what is feeding new hobbyists and what are some of the new stock options?
I think that like personally, what's still feeding vintage is probably kids. As funny as that is, like for me, I love it that my kids are playing with new toys, right? And I can imagine that anybody who sees their kid playing with a Spider-Man or a Luke Skywalker, that it brings back the nostalgia factor, right? I think, and the fact that there is new content in a lot of these areas. Motu has the Revelations that came out last year, in the year before that rather, and Star Wars obviously with new content all the time. I really think it has a lot to do with at least as far as keeping content alive and keeping collectors buying. The new product, I like a lot of it. I buy a lot of it myself too. I like specifically like McFarlane toys. I think he does a really good job. So it's like it just depends on, there's a lot of factors I would say, but I think that the fact that new content is still coming out for a lot of these toys really brings them still to relevancy, in the market.
Mm-hmm. Hockey Barn makes a neat comment here. He says, "Dark hair, dark boots, like light body, make him look like a slice of bread." With respect to the Wonder Bread He-Man, I wonder if that had anything to do with it. So it's a smart comment, really.
No, yeah, it's not. That's not a bad idea at all. I mean, it's definitely would play into it a little bit.
Okay, fellas. So there's 3 items remaining. What do you think, Mark? You want to wrap this up and let those expire on their own? Is there anything else you'd like to discuss or talk about?
Yeah, we can let those go through the night. This I think is the longest auction we've had with the lot by lot closing period at the end. It's been 1 hour since that closing period started. So yeah, they're battling it out. We'll see what happens. Already an all-time record for certainly the battle ram. Like I said, I think that's the best piece in the hobby. And I think the bidders that are on that are well aware of that. That's the first release. There's only 8 characters on the back. You had showed the back, Jeremy. Super good. Like, I mean, this piece is really, really nice. It looks like it's like pulled from a case that was produced yesterday. And the quality of the box, the texture is like a canvas that you paint on. Like, you can kind of see it. If you run your fingers over it, it's super high quality how they made them back then.
It's like an Upper Deck canvas card from their hockey cards, Series 1, Series 2. You can see that right there.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice to the touch.
Super high quality. So that's what they're battling over. Thank you to all the bidders that came out today and participated, and all the viewers that watched. And, hopefully we were able to pass on a little bit of knowledge, and maybe some people get interested in collecting these. And if you guys ever have a question, reach out to our customer service info@lcgauctions.com, or you can call. But yeah, we're always going to make ourselves available, and we do whatever we can. Our perspective is that of the customer. So fast shipping, answering questions promptly, all that stuff means a lot. And we go the extra mile to do that. You're not going to get lost in the shuffle. There's going to be open and clear communication, and we pride ourselves on that.
It's nice to hear. There's a good opportunity in the whole collectible space to provide exceptional customer service. I think it goes a long way. Tony Johnson, welcome, says, who knew that Mo 2 would have legs like that? I'm He-Man. All right. Well, listen, I mean, this has been a lot of fun for me. Very educational. I love these things. Look at Dennis's office. Like, that's heaven right there. Hey, Dennis, you must love sitting in that space you're in right now.
I do, man. I do.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun for me, guys. I want to thank you for both of you for joining. I want to thank anyone who's still here with us. It is a Sports Cards Live viewer, listener. Thank you for sticking through, and hopefully this brought value to you. And if you're new to Sports Cards Live by virtue of LCG Auctions, well, welcome and glad to have you. And feel free to tune in for more content coming fast and furious here on the channel. Any final comments, guys, before we end this broadcast?
All good for me.
Yes, thank you everybody for tuning in, for participating. Thank you for all the support. I mean, we couldn't be here without our just everybody. So we're very grateful for everything.
And thanks for Peter Garcia, who joined us for a segment earlier. Collectors League, no cards, but I will be coming back live in about an hour and a half for the PWCC weekly auction ending coverage. So I'm working hard today. Mod Cult says, awesome show, awesome host, awesome guest. Congrats. Thank you, Mod. Great to see you. All right, guys. Well, this brings to an end the first ever LCG Auctions premier pop culture extended bidding watch party. What a party it was. So thanks again, everybody, for being here. And this episode is now over.